Story 1.
My mom forbade me from celebrating my 18th birthday because my 16-year-old sister threw a tantrum, screaming that she didn't feel special enough and it wasn't fair I was turning 18 first. My mom looked at me and said, "Just skip it this year. You're an adult now anyway. Be mature." I didn't argue. That same night, I packed my bags and moved out while they slept. 5 years later, they saw me at a restaurant, happy, successful, with my husband and 2 beautiful kids. My sister completely lost it, and my mom. I need to tell someone this before it eats me alive. 5 years ago, I disappeared. Not in the dramatic, leave a note on the kitchen table way. Just gone. One night I was in my childhood bedroom with its peeling paint and the crack in the ceiling I'd traced 1,000 times, and the next morning that room was empty. They woke up to silence and an unlocked back door. But I'm getting ahead of myself. The night before my 18th birthday, I stood in our cramped living room holding a grocery store cake I'd bought with my own money from my job at the diner. Chocolate with white frosting. Simple. I wasn't asking for a party or presents or anything elaborate. Just acknowledgement. Just one dinner where I mattered. My sister Riley was sprawled on the couch, scrolling through her phone with that bored expression she'd perfected. 16 years old and already a master manipulator. She'd learned early that tears got her everything, and tantrums got her the rest. "Mom's not going to let you do this," Riley said without looking up. "Do what? Exist?" She smiled then, and I saw it, that flash of satisfaction. She wanted me to know she'd already won a fight I didn't realize we were having. Mom came in from the kitchen, wiping her hands on a dish towel. She looked tired. She'd always looked tired, but that night there was something else in her face. Resignation, maybe. Or relief that someone was about to make a decision for her. "Riley's upset," Mom said, like that explained everything. "About what?" "About you turning 18. She feels like you're leaving her behind." I stood there holding that stupid cake, feeling the weight of it in my arms, and something cracked open inside me. Not anger yet. Just this cold, clear understanding. I'm leaving her behind by having a birthday? You know how sensitive she is. Mom's voice had that pleading edge. She's been crying all afternoon. She says it's not fair that you get to be an adult first, that you get all the freedom and she's stuck being the baby. Riley made a small sound from the couch. Not quite a sob, but close enough. "So what do you want me to do?" I asked, though I already knew. "Just skip it this year. You're an adult now anyway. Be mature about this." There it was. The magic word she'd been using on me since I was 12 and Riley was 10. Be mature. Be the bigger person. Let it go. As if maturity meant erasing myself so Riley could take up more space. I looked at my mother's face, really looked at it, and saw a stranger. Someone who'd spent 16 years choosing comfort over fairness, quiet over confrontation. Someone who'd decided long ago that sacrificing one daughter was easier than disciplining the other. "Okay," I said. Mom's shoulders dropped with relief. "Thank you, sweetie. I knew you'd understand." I put the cake on the coffee table. Riley glanced at it, then went back to her phone. She'd already moved on, probably planning what she'd demand for her own birthday in 2 months. Something bigger, something better, something that proved she was the one who mattered. I went upstairs. Here's what I remember about that night: the sound of my own breathing. The way my hands shook as I pulled my duffel bag from the closet. How methodical I became once I started packing. Not everything, just enough. Clothes. Documents. The emergency cash I'd been hiding in a tampon box because I'd learned early that nothing in this house stayed private unless you made it invisible. $347. Every dollar I'd saved that Mom hadn't found an excuse to need, that Riley hadn't stolen for some urgent want. I packed my laptop, my phone charger, the photo album from before Dad left. I took the necklace my grandmother gave me before she died, the only piece of jewelry I owned that Riley hadn't claimed as too pretty to waste on me. Around midnight, I heard Mom go to bed. 30 minutes later, Riley's light clicked off. I sat on my bed in the dark and waited. 1 hour. 2. The house settled into its familiar nighttime sounds, the refrigerator humming downstairs, the creak of old pipes, the neighbor's dog barking at shadows. At 2:30 in the morning, I stood up. I walked down the stairs in my socks, carrying my shoes. Each step felt like it took an hour. The 5th stair creaked, and I froze, certain Mom would appear in her bathrobe asking what I was doing. But the house stayed quiet. Even it was tired of me. In the kitchen, I wrote exactly 3 words on the whiteboard we used for grocery lists: "I'm 18 now." Then I erased it. They didn't deserve an explanation. I unlocked the back door, picked up my bags, and walked into the April darkness. The air was cool and damp, and somewhere a few streets over, I could hear the distant sound of a car alarm. I didn't look back at the house. I just walked to the end of the driveway, turned left, and kept walking. My best friend Jenna lived 4 miles away. I called her before I left, whispered the whole plan into the phone while sitting in my closet. She said 3 words, "I'll be ready." She was waiting on her porch when I got there, wrapped in a blanket, holding 2 thermoses of coffee. We didn't say anything. We just sat there on her front steps as the sky started to turn gray, and I realized I was shaking. Not from cold. From something else. Something that felt dangerously close to freedom. "You really did it," Jenna finally said. "I really did. Your mom's going to lose her mind." Maybe. But here's the thing I already knew, even then, my mom wasn't going to lose her mind. She was going to be relieved. One less person to manage. One less mediator between her and Riley's next tantrum. She'd probably spend a day or 2 calling my phone, leaving increasingly annoyed messages about how childish I was being, how I was breaking her heart. Then she'd stop. She'd tell people I'd left for college early, or that I was staying with a friend, or whatever story made her look like less of a failure. And she'd be glad I was gone. I stayed with Jenna for 2 weeks while I figured things out. Her parents asked questions, gentle ones, but they didn't push. They let me sleep on their couch and eat their food and slowly start to feel like a person again instead of a supporting character in someone else's story. My phone rang 63 times in those first 3 days. I counted. Mom. Riley. Mom again. I let every call go to voicemail. The messages were predictable. "Where are you? This is ridiculous. Come home right now. You're being selfish. Riley misses you. I miss you. How could you do this? Call me back." On day 4, the messages changed. "Fine," Mom said, her voice tight and angry. "If you want to throw a tantrum like a child, go ahead. But don't come crawling back when you realize how hard the real world is. You're on your own." I saved that voicemail. I still have it. I got serious about my plan. The diner where I worked full-time was hiring for more hours, and the manager liked me enough to give me the overnight shifts that paid slightly more. I found a room to rent in a house with 3 other people, all older, all quiet, all too busy with their own lives to care about mine. The room was tiny, barely big enough for a twin bed and a dresser, but it was mine. The door had a lock. Nobody could barge in demanding to borrow my clothes or use my laptop or steal my tips. I enrolled in community college for the fall. General education classes because I didn't know what I wanted yet, only what I didn't want, to end up like Mom, building my life around someone else's tantrums. Months passed. 6. 8. 10. I didn't call. They didn't call. Sometimes late at night, when the house was quiet and I was lying in bed staring at the water stain on my ceiling, I'd feel it, that hollow ache of missing something I'd never really had. Not missing Mom, exactly, or even Riley. Missing the idea of them. The fantasy version where Mom protected me and Riley loved me and we were actually a family instead of just people who happened to live in the same house. But then I'd remember that last birthday. The way Mom looked at me when she told me to be mature. The casual cruelty of it, like my hurt was an inconvenience she couldn't be bothered to manage. And the ache would harden into something else. Something cleaner. I met David at the community college library. He was studying engineering, working 2 jobs to afford tuition, living in a studio apartment that was somehow even smaller than my rented room. We started as study partners. Then friends. Then more. He was the first person I told the whole story to, not just the birthday, but everything that came before it. The years of being told to be quiet, be smaller, be less. The way Riley learned she could take anything from me as long as she cried loud enough. The way Mom's love was a pie, and she decided Riley deserved almost all of it. David listened. He didn't interrupt or try to fix it or tell me I was exaggerating. When I finished, he just said, "You deserved better." 3 words. Simple. True. We got married 3 years after we met. Nothing fancy, courthouse wedding, 2 witnesses we barely knew, Chinese takeout afterward. But it was ours. I wore a white dress I found at a thrift store, and David wore the one nice suit he owned, and when the judge said we were married, I felt something I hadn't felt in years. Safe. We had Lily 8 months later. Not planned, but not unwelcome either. She was tiny and perfect and loud, screaming her demands at 3 in the morning like the world owed her everything. And the first time I held her, exhausted and overwhelmed and terrified I'd mess her up the way I'd been messed up, I made a promise. Nobody would ever make her feel invisible. Nobody would ever tell her to shrink so someone else could shine. Marcus came 19 months after Lily. Another surprise, another perfect disaster. Suddenly we were a family of 4 living in a 2-bedroom apartment, drowning in diapers and student loans and the kind of tire that goes bone deep. But we were happy. Actually happy. The kind of happiness that's built on trust and respect and the radical idea that love shouldn't require you to disappear. David finished his engineering degree and got hired by a tech company. Good pay, actual benefits, the kind of job that meant we could breathe a little easier. I graduated with my associate's degree and got a position at a marketing firm, working my way up from assistant to coordinator to junior manager. We moved into a small house. Nothing fancy, 3 bedrooms, 1 bathroom, a backyard the size of a postage stamp. But it had a fenced yard where the kids could play, and a kitchen with enough counter space to cook real meals, and a front door that belonged to us. 5 years after I left, we were making it work. I thought about Mom sometimes. About Riley. Wondered if they ever looked for me, if they ever realized what they'd lost. But mostly I didn't. Mostly I was too busy living the life I'd built to mourn the one I'd left behind. Then came the restaurant. David surprised me with a date night. Our first real one in months, since juggling 2 kids and 2 careers meant romance usually happened in 10-minute increments between bedtime and collapse. We got a babysitter, David's cousin, who the kids loved, and went to this Italian place downtown. Nicer than anywhere we'd usually go, but we'd been saving up, and David insisted we deserved it. The restaurant was warm and dimly lit, all exposed brick and soft jazz playing in the background. We got a corner table, ordered wine we couldn't really afford, and spent the first 20 minutes just talking. Really talking. About work and the kids and whether we should try for a 3rd baby eventually and how Lily had learned to write her name and Marcus kept trying to eat dirt. Normal things. Happy things. I was halfway through my pasta when I heard it. A voice I hadn't heard in years, pitched high with irritation. Mom, this place is so expensive. Why couldn't we just go somewhere normal? My fork stopped halfway to my mouth. Because, another voice said, tired and defensive, we need to have a nice dinner. We never do anything nice anymore. I turned my head slowly, afraid of what I'd see. There they were. 15 feet away, being seated at a table near the window. Mom looked older, grayer hair, deeper lines around her mouth, something defeated in the way she carried herself. And Riley. 22 now, wearing a tight dress and too much makeup, scrolling through her phone before she'd even sat down. For a second, I couldn't breathe. The restaurant disappeared. The years disappeared. I was 18 again, holding that grocery store cake, listening to Mom tell me to be mature. Babe? David's voice cut through the fog. You okay? That's them, I whispered. He followed my gaze. Your mom and sister? I nodded. David's jaw tightened. He'd never met them, but he knew the stories. He knew what they'd done. Do you want to leave? Part of me did. Part of me wanted to throw money on the table and run before they saw me, before this fragile piece I'd built could crack. But another part of me, the part that had spent 5 years learning I deserved to exist, stayed exactly where I was. No, I said. I want to finish my dinner. We went back to eating, but I couldn't taste anything anymore. My entire body was tensed, waiting. David kept shooting me concerned glances, and I tried to smile like everything was fine, but we both knew it wasn't. 10 minutes later, Riley got up to use the bathroom. The path took her right past our table. She walked by without seeing me at first, her eyes on her phone. Then she stopped. Backed up. Stared. Oh my gosh, she said, loud enough that people at nearby tables looked over. Is that you? I set down my fork carefully. Hi, Riley. She looked exactly the same but worse somehow, still pretty, still convinced the world revolved around her, but with something harder in her face now. Something bitter. You've been here the whole time? In the city? I live here, yeah. For how long? 5 years and some change, I said, and meant exactly none of it. She laughed, but it wasn't a happy sound. 5 years? You've been here for 5 years and you never called? Never reached out? I could say the same to you. You're the one who left. Other diners were definitely watching now. David reached across the table and took my hand. I squeezed it, drawing strength from the simple fact that he was there. I know, I said quietly. I left. Mom was devastated. She cried for weeks. I thought about that voicemail. How Mom had gone from worried to angry to dismissive in less than 4 days. But I didn't say that. I just looked at Riley and saw her for what she'd always been, someone who needed to be the victim, even in stories that had nothing to do with her. I'm sorry to hear that, I said, and meant exactly none of it. Riley's eyes dropped to my left hand, to the simple gold band there. Then to David. Then to the framed photo I kept in my wallet, visible on the table, Lily and Marcus, grinning at the camera. You're married, she said flatly. I am. You have kids. 2. Something twisted in her face. Jealousy, maybe. Or rage that I'd managed to build a life without her permission. Mom needs to see this, Riley said, already turning. Riley, don't, but she was already walking back to their table, gesturing wildly. Mom looked up, confused at first, then followed Riley's pointing finger. Our eyes met across the restaurant. I don't know what I expected to see in Mom's face. Shock, maybe. Relief. Even anger would have been something. But what I saw was worse than any of those things. I saw guilt. She stood up slowly, like her bones hurt, and walked over to our table. Riley trailed behind her, practically vibrating with some toxic combination of vindication and fury. Hi, Mom, I said when she got close enough. You look good, Mom said quietly. Not what are you doing here or why did you leave or I've missed you. Just you look good, like we were distant acquaintances running into each other at grocery store. Thanks. She glanced at David, then back at me. This is your husband? Yes. This is David. David, this is my mother, Claire. And my sister, Riley. David stood and offered his hand. Mom shook it limply. Riley ignored it. You have children? Mom asked. 2. Lily just turned 4, and Marcus is 2. Mom's face did something complicated. I have grandchildren. You do. And you never told me. Here it was. The moment she'd try to make this about her hurt, her loss, her victimhood. The moment she'd rewrite history so she was the wrong party. I could have let her. Years ago, I would have. I would have apologized and made it smaller and found some way to take the blame. But I was different now. I'd spent years learning my own worth. Years building a life where I didn't have to apologize for existing. You told me to be mature, I said, my voice steady. So I was. I grew up and moved out and built a life. That's what adults do. You just disappeared, Riley cut in. No warning, no explanation. Do you know what that did to us? I looked at her then, really looked at her. 21 years old and still playing the same games, still demanding the world accommodate her feelings while dismissing everyone else's. Do you remember my 18th birthday, Riley? She blinked. What? My 18th birthday. Do you remember it? I don't. You told Mom it wasn't fair that I was turning 18. That it made you feel not special enough. And Mom told me to skip my birthday so you wouldn't be upset. Riley's mouth opened, then closed. She looked at Mom. Mom's face had gone very pale. It wasn't like that. It was exactly like that, I said. And it wasn't the first time. It was just the last time. We were a family. No. The word came out harder than I intended. We were 3 people living in a house. One of whom got everything she wanted whenever she cried. One of whom made sure she got it. And one who learned her job was to disappear so everyone else could be comfortable. That's not fair, Mom whispered. You're right. It wasn't fair. None of it was fair. Riley made a strangled sound. So you just get to leave? Just get to move on and have this perfect life while you what? I asked. While you got exactly what you wanted? A house with no competition? Mom's undivided attention? That's not, Riley stopped, her face twisting. You don't know what it's been like. Then tell me. But she couldn't. Or wouldn't. She just stood there, trembling with an anger she couldn't articulate, maybe because deep down she knew I was right. Mom put a hand on Riley's arm. We should go back to our table. No, Riley said. No, she doesn't get to just show up with her perfect husband and her perfect kids and act like she's better than us. I never said I was better than anyone. You didn't have to say it. You're thinking it. Looking at us like we're pathetic. Riley, Mom said, more firmly now. But Riley was spiraling, the way she always did when she didn't get what she wanted. This is so typical. So typical of you. Always making everything about yourself, always playing the victim. That's enough. Mom's voice cracked like a whip. Riley fell silent, shocked. I was shocked too. I'd never heard Mom use that tone with her before. Mom looked at me, and in her eyes I saw something I'd never seen directed at me before. Regret. Real, honest regret. I made mistakes, she said quietly. With both of you. But especially with you. She swallowed hard. I knew what I was doing was wrong. Every time I chose her feelings over yours, I knew. But it was easier. Dealing with her tantrums was exhausting, and you just took it. You were so good at taking it that I convinced myself it was okay. That you understood. I wanted to argue, to tell her she was wrong, to protect the version of her I'd built in my head over the past 5 years, the villain who was too blind to see what she was doing. But hearing her admit it, hearing her say the quiet part out loud, it didn't feel like vindication. It just felt sad. You made a choice, I said. Every day, you made a choice. And I made mine. I know. Mom's voice was barely audible. I know you did. And I don't blame you for it. Riley was crying now, ugly tears that smudged her makeup. So that's it? You're just going to let her walk away again? Yes, Mom said, still looking at me. Because she has every right to. Something shifted in the air. The restaurant sounds came back, the clink of silverware, the murmur of conversations, the soft jazz. David's hand was still in mine, solid and real. I should get back to my dinner, I said. Mom nodded. She reached into her purse, pulled out a business card and set it on our table. If you ever want to talk. Or if you want us to meet your children. I understand if you don't. But the offer's there. I looked at the card. Didn't pick it up. Okay, I said. Mom guided Riley away, back to their table. Riley kept looking over her shoulder, her face a mess of tears and rage and something that might have been loss. I watched them sit down, watched Mom say something quiet to Riley, watched Riley shake her head and grab her purse and storm out of the restaurant. Mom didn't follow her. She just sat there, alone at a table set for two, staring at her water glass. You okay? David asked softly. I don't know, I said honestly. We finished our dinner. It took everything I had to eat, to smile at David, to pretend my entire body wasn't shaking with adrenaline. But I did it. I stayed. I didn't run. When we left, I glanced at Mom's table. She was still there, sitting in the dim light, looking older than she had any right to. She saw me looking and raised her hand in a small, uncertain wave. I didn't wave back. But I didn't look away either. I just held her gaze for one long moment, then walked out with my husband's arm around my waist. In the car, David asked, Are you going to call her? I thought about the business card, still sitting on the restaurant table where I'd left it. Thought about Lily and Marcus at home, probably terrorizing David's cousin with their endless energy. Thought about the life I'd built from nothing but determination and the radical decision to choose myself. I don't know, I said. Maybe someday. Maybe never. Whatever you decide, I'm with you. I believed him. That was the difference between the family I'd left and the family I'd made. Trust. Respect. The bone-deep certainty that I didn't have to disappear for someone else to shine. We drove home through streets that felt familiar now, that belonged to me in a way that house I grew up in never did. But the silence in the car was different than usual. Heavier. David kept one hand on the wheel and the other on my knee, his thumb tracing small circles against my jeans. That took guts, he said quietly. It didn't feel like it. It was. Standing your ground like that. Not letting her rewrite history. I leaned my head against the cool window and watched the street lights blur past. My chest felt tight, like something was pressing down on my ribs. I kept replaying the conversation, Mom's face when she admitted she'd known all along what she was doing. Riley's tears. The business card I'd left behind. Do you think I'm a bad person? The question came out before I could stop it. David glanced at me, surprised. What? No. Why would you think that? Because I left them. Because I watched Riley cry and felt nothing. Because when Mom said she had grandchildren she didn't know about, part of me was glad she didn't. That doesn't make you a bad person. That makes you human. Or damaged. Or surviving. He pulled into our driveway and put the car in park but didn't turn off the engine. Listen to me. What they did to you, what your mom let happen for years, that wasn't okay. You don't owe them forgiveness just because they're family. You don't owe them anything. I wanted to believe him. Most days I did believe him. But sitting there in the dark car with the engine running and Mom's face still fresh in my mind, all I felt was tired. When we got inside, the babysitter reported that both kids had gone down easy, and we paid her and locked the door behind her. The house was warm and quiet, filled with a familiar mess of family life, toys scattered across the living room floor, sippy cups on the coffee table, Lily's drawings taped to the refrigerator. This was real. This was mine. I checked on Lily first. She was sprawled across her bed, one arm hanging off the edge, her favorite stuffed rabbit clutched in her other hand. I tucked the blanket around her and kissed her forehead. She stirred, mumbled something that might have been mommy, and went still again. My throat tightened. What would I tell her someday when she asked about my family? Would I lie and say they were gone? Tell her the truth and watch her try to understand why her grandma had chosen one daughter over the other? How do you explain to a child that sometimes love comes with conditions, with rankings, with a quiet understanding that someone else will always matter more? Then Marcus. Still in his crib because he was an escape artist who couldn't be trusted with a toddler bed yet. He was sleeping on his stomach, his bottom in the air, peaceful in the way only small children can be. I stood there in the dark nursery, listening to him breathe, and felt it again. That sense of rightness. Of home. David found me there and wrapped his arms around me from behind. Hey. Hey. You want to talk about it? Not yet. Okay. But here's what I didn't tell him that night. I couldn't stop thinking about the look on Mom's face when she saw my kids in that photo. Not anger or resentment, but this raw, devastating loss. Like she'd suddenly realized what she'd given up. Who she'd given up. The next morning, Lily woke me up by climbing into bed and sticking her cold feet against my legs. Marcus started screaming from his crib approximately 30 seconds later, because that's how mornings worked in our house, chaos wrapped in more chaos. I went through the motions. Changed diapers. Made breakfast. Refereed the fight over who got the blue plate. Answered 17 consecutive questions from Lily about why birds could fly and we couldn't. Stopped Marcus from eating a crayon. Normal things. Good things. But my mind kept drifting back to that restaurant. To Riley's face when she realized I'd built a life without her permission. To Mom sitting alone at that table after Riley stormed out. David left for work around 8, kissing me goodbye and whispering, "Call me if you need anything." He knew. Even when I said I was fine, he knew. I took the kids to the park that afternoon. Lily ran straight for the swings, demanding I push her higher, "Mommy, higher." Marcus toddled around the playground, stopping every few feet to pick up rocks and try to eat them. A woman on the bench next to me smiled. "How old are yours?" 4 and 2. Beautiful ages. Hard, but beautiful. I nodded, watching Lily pump her legs, her hair flying out behind her as she swung. "Yeah. You have family nearby to help?" The question was innocent. Friendly. The kind of small talk parents make at playgrounds. But it hit me like a punch to the chest. "No," I said. "Just us." "That's tough. My mom watches mine twice a week. I don't know what I'd do without her." I smiled and said something noncommittal, then got up to chase Marcus away from the bark chips he was trying to eat. But the conversation stuck with me. That casual assumption that of course I had family, of course there was a support system, of course my mother was part of my children's lives. For most people, that was just normal. Expected. For me, it was a choice I'd made 5 years ago in a dark kitchen. That night, after the kids were in bed, I stood in front of my laptop for 20 minutes before finally opening it. My fingers hovered over the keyboard. I typed Claire Anderson into the search bar, then deleted it. Typed it again. Deleted it again. "What are you doing?" David asked from the doorway. "I don't know." He sat down next to me. "You're curious." "Maybe." "That's okay." "Is it?" "Yeah. It's okay to wonder how they're doing. It doesn't mean you have to let them back in." I typed the name one more time and hit enter. Facebook profiles loaded on the screen. I scrolled past several Claire Andersons before finding her. The profile picture was 2 years old, Mom and Riley at some restaurant, both smiling for the camera. Riley's arm was around Mom's shoulders, possessive. I clicked on the profile. It was mostly private, but I could see a few public posts. A status update about Mom's job at the elementary school. A shared article about parenting adult children. A few photos of Riley from what looked like her college days, though nothing recent. Nothing about me. No old photos, no mentions, no evidence that I'd ever existed in their lives at all. I closed the laptop. Find anything? David asked. They look fine. And how do you feel about that? I thought about it, really thought about it. I don't know. Part of me wants them to be miserable. To have regretted losing me every single day. To have spent 5 years realizing what they threw away. And the other part? The other part is relieved they're okay. Because if they're okay, it means I didn't destroy them by leaving. It means they really didn't need me as much as I needed them to. Or it means they're good at pretending on social media. Maybe. But I knew better. People who were truly hurting didn't smile like that in pictures. Didn't post cheerfully about their jobs and graduations and normal lives. They'd moved on. Maybe not right away, but eventually. The same way I had. The difference was, I'd had to build everything from scratch. They just had to adjust to having one less person to accommodate. Over the next few days, I kept thinking about that business card. About the offer Mom had made. About whether I was strong enough now to let them back in without losing myself in the process. I talked to Jenna about it. We met for coffee while the kids were at daycare, something we tried to do once a month when our schedules aligned. So your mom wants back in? Jenna said after I'd explained everything. She said the offer was there. That's not exactly the same as wanting back in. Close enough. Jenna stirred her coffee, considering. What do you want? That's the problem. I don't know. Okay, different question. What scares you about letting them meet the kids? I took a long sip of coffee, buying time. That they'll do to Lily what they did to me. That Riley will show up and need to be the center of attention, and suddenly my daughter will be the one learning to make herself smaller. That Mom will pick favorites again, and this time it'll be my kids getting hurt. Those are valid fears. I know. But here's the thing. Jenna leaned forward, her voice gentle but firm. You're not your mom. You see that pattern now? You'd never let it happen. What if I'm not strong enough to stop it? Then you cut them off again. You've done it before. You can do it again if you have to. She made it sound simple. Maybe for her it was. Jenna's family was loud and messy and chaotic, but they loved each other without conditions. She'd never had to choose between herself and them. I keep thinking about something Mom said, I admit it. That she knew what she was doing was wrong but did it anyway because it was easier. Because I just took it. And she was right. I did just take it. For years. I let Riley steal my things and my moments and my mother's attention, and I never said anything. I just swallowed it and tried to be good enough that eventually it would stop. You were a kid. That's what kids do. They try to earn love instead of demanding it. But I'm not a kid anymore. No. You're not. So what are you going to do? I stared into my coffee cup, at the swirls of cream that hadn't quite mixed in. I don't know yet. But that wasn't entirely true. Deep down, in the part of me I didn't want to examine too closely, I already knew. I just wasn't ready to admit it out loud. 2 weeks after the restaurant, I got a text from an unknown number. This is your mother. Riley gave me your number. I don't want to intrude, but I'm thinking about you. I stared at the message for 5 full minutes. David was giving Marcus a bath, and Lily was watching a cartoon in the living room, and I was standing alone in the kitchen with my phone in my hand feeling like I was 18 again. I didn't respond that night. Or the next day. Or the day after that. But I didn't block the number either. 3 days later, another text came through. I understand if you don't want to talk. I just want you to know that I'm sorry. For all of it. I know that doesn't fix anything, but it's true. I typed and deleted a response 4 different times. Finally settled on, thank you for saying that. Her reply came within seconds. Can we talk? Just for a few minutes? I won't ask for anything. I just want to hear your voice. My hands were shaking. I walked to the bedroom, closed the door, and dialed before I could change my mind. She answered on the first ring. Hello? Hi, Mom. Oh. Her voice cracked. Hi, sweetie. Thank you for calling. I didn't think you would. I almost didn't. I'm glad you did. A pause. How are you? I'm good. We're all good. And your husband? David? He's great. He's a good man. A good father. I'm glad you found that. I really am. Another pause, longer this time. I don't know how to do this. I practiced what I'd say if you called, and now I can't remember any of it. Despite everything, I almost smiled. Just talk. Say what you need to say. Okay. I heard her take a shaky breath. I failed you. For years, I failed you. I saw what was happening, how Riley took and you just gave, and I let it happen because it was easier than facing the real problem. I told myself you were mature enough to handle it, that you understood. But you shouldn't have had to understand. You should have just been allowed to be a kid. I closed my eyes, leaning back against the headboard. Why didn't you stop it? Because I was scared. Her voice was barely above a whisper. Riley's always been so intense. Even as a baby, she demanded everything. And I was so tired, and your dad had just left, and I didn't know how to handle her without just giving in. And you were so easy. So quiet and good and understanding. I took advantage of that. I took advantage of you. You did. I know. And I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I've thought about you every day since you left. About that last birthday, about the look on your face when I told you to skip it. About waking up and finding you gone. About all the years I can't get back. Tears were running down my face, hot and fast. You hurt me. I know. You chose her over me. Every single time. I know. And now you want me to what? Forgive you? Let you meet my kids? Pretend the last 5 years didn't happen? No. Her voice was firm. I don't want any of that. Not if you're not ready. Maybe not ever, if that's what you need. I just wanted to tell you the truth. I wanted you to know that I see it now. What I did. What it cost you. What it cost us. I wiped at my face with the back of my hand. What about Riley? Mom sighed, a sound so tired it made her sound ancient. Riley's struggling. She dropped out of college last semester. She's back home, and she's angry all the time. At me, at herself, at the world. Seeing you that night, seeing that you built this whole life without us, it broke something in her. Good. I know you don't mean that. Don't I? The anger surprised me with its sharpness. She spent 16 years making sure I knew I didn't matter. Why shouldn't I be glad she finally understands what that feels like? Because you're better than that. You always have been. Maybe I'm tired of being better. Maybe you have every right to be. We sat in silence, the phone line crackling faintly between us. Somewhere in the house, I could hear Lily laughing at her cartoon. The sound felt like an anchor, pulling me back to what mattered. I can't do this right now, I said finally. I can't process all of this and be a mom and be a wife and hold down a job. It's too much. I understand. But I'm not saying never. I'm just saying not yet. That's more than I deserve. Mom's voice was thick with tears. Thank you. Don't thank me. This isn't for you. This is for me. I need time to think about what I want, if I even want anything at all. Whatever you decide, I'll accept it. I promise. Okay. I love you. I know I didn't always show it the right way, but I do love you. I always have. I wanted to say it back. The words were right there, muscle memory from 18 years of obligatory I love yous. But they stuck in my throat. I know, I said instead. After I hung up, I sat there for a long time, just breathing. David found me there 20 minutes later, sitting in the dark with my phone in my lap. You called her, he said. Not a question. She texted. I called back. How was it? Hard. Sad. Honest, I think. He sat down next to me and pulled me against his chest. I let myself lean into him, let myself be held. What do you want to do? He asked. I want to turn back time and have a mother who chose me. I want a sister who loved me instead of resented me. I want a family that looks like what families are supposed to look like. But you can't have that? No. I can't. So what do you want that you can actually have? That was the real question, wasn't it? What did I want from the people who'd hurt me? What was I willing to risk? What was I willing to protect? I want my kids to know where they come from, I said slowly. Not the details, not yet. But someday. I want them to understand that families are complicated, that sometimes people mess up, that forgiveness is a choice and not an obligation. And I want to be sure. Really sure. That letting Mom and Riley back in won't destroy what I built. That I'm strong enough now to set boundaries and keep them. That I won't fall back into old patterns just because they're familiar. David kissed the top of my head. You're one of the strongest people I know. You left with nothing and built all of this. You raised 2 incredible kids while working full-time and finishing school. You stood up to your mom in that restaurant even though you were terrified. You're not that 18-year-old girl anymore. Sometimes I feel like I am. But you're not. And whenever you decide what you want to do, whether it's letting them in or keeping them out or something in between, I'll support you. We'll figure it out together. We stood there together in the quiet, and I thought about Mom sitting alone at that restaurant table. About Riley storming out, still unable to accept that the world didn't revolve around her. About all the years of hurt and silence that had led to this moment. And I thought about the choice I'd made years ago in the middle of the night. The choice to walk away, to save myself, to build something better. I didn't regret it. Not for a second. The weeks after that phone call were strange. Normal on the surface, work, kids, dinner, bedtime routine, but underneath, I felt like I was standing at a crossroads I couldn't see clearly. Mom texted occasionally. Nothing pushy. Just little messages. Thinking of you. Hope you're well. Saw a cardinal today and thought of you. That last one almost made me cry because she remembered. When I was 7, I'd become obsessed with cardinals, collecting pictures and facts about them. She'd forgotten so many things about me over the years, but apparently not that. I didn't always respond. Sometimes I did, a simple thank you or hope you're doing okay too. We were learning how to be in each other's orbits again without colliding. Riley never reached out. I didn't expect her to. She'd always needed to be the one who was wronged, the victim of someone else's choices. Facing me meant facing her own role in our fractured family, and Riley had never been good at accountability. David noticed the shift in me. The way I'd stare at my phone sometimes, finger hovering over Mom's contact. The way I'd get quiet during dinner, lost in thought. You're thinking about it, he said one night after we'd put the kids to bed. About what? Don't do that. Don't pretend you don't know what I'm talking about. I sighed, setting down the dish I'd been washing. I keep wondering what I'm supposed to do. Is forgiveness just letting someone back in? Or is it something you can do from a distance? Can you forgive someone and still protect yourself from them? I think forgiveness looks different for everyone. That's not helpful. He smiled. I know. But it's true. You don't owe your mom a relationship just because she apologized. Apologies don't erase harm. They're just the first step, not the destination. So what's the destination? Whatever feels safe for you. Whatever lets you sleep at night and look at yourself in the mirror and know you did right by yourself and your kids. I leaned against the counter, exhausted by the weight of it all. I'm scared. Of what? Of making the wrong choice. Of letting her in and having her hurt my kids the way she hurt me. Of keeping her out and regretting it later, when it's too late to fix. You can't predict the future. You can only make the best choice you can with what you know right now. And if it turns out to be wrong, you adjust. That's what strong people do, they adjust. When did you get so wise? I married you, didn't I? I threw the dish towel at him. But his words stuck with me. You adjust. That was the key, wasn't it? Nothing had to be permanent. No decision had to be forever. I could try something small, see how it felt, and change course if needed. 3 months after the restaurant encounter, I invited Mom to meet us at the park. Neutral territory. Lots of people around. Easy to leave if things went sideways. I told the kids we were meeting a friend of Mommy's. Lily was too excited about the swings to care. Marcus was going through a phase where he only wanted to throw rocks into the pond, so he barely acknowledged the information. Mom arrived 10 minutes early. I watched her from the parking lot, sitting on a bench near the playground, hands folded in her lap, looking smaller than I remembered. She'd gotten older in 5 years. We all had. But on her, it showed in a way that made my chest ache. She saw us approaching and stood up, uncertain. The smile on her face was tentative, hopeful, terrified. Hi, I said when we got close enough. Hi. She looked at the kids like she couldn't quite believe they were real. These are your children. This is Lily. She's 4. And this is Marcus. He's almost 2. They're beautiful. Thanks. An awkward silence stretched between us. Lily tugged on my hand. Mommy, can I go on the swings? In a minute, sweetie. I looked at Mom. Do you want to sit? We sat on the bench while the kids played nearby, Lily climbing on the jungle gym, Marcus squatting to examine a particularly interesting stick. Thank you for coming, Mom said quietly. I'm not sure what this is yet. I'm not making promises. I know. I'm just grateful you're here. We sat in silence for a while, watching Lily help Marcus climb up the small slide. She was so patient with him, so gentle. Everything a big sibling should be. She's good with him, Mom observed. She is. She loves being a big sister. You're a good mother. The compliment caught me off guard. I'm trying. You're succeeding. Mom's voice cracked slightly. You're giving them everything I should have given you. I didn't know what to say to that, so I said nothing. Can I ask you something? Mom said after a moment. Sure. Do you ever, she stopped, started again. Do you think about forgiving me? Every day, I admitted. But I don't know what that looks like yet. I don't know if it means letting you be part of our lives or just making peace with what happened and moving forward without you. Both are valid. I know. For what it's worth, Mom said, I'm in therapy now. Have been for 6 months. Trying to understand why I made the choices I did. Trying to break the pattern so I don't repeat them. That surprised me. Really? Really. It's hard. Facing the things I did, the person I was. But I'm doing it. Not because I think it'll make you take me back. Just because it's what I should have done years ago. I watched Marcus toddle over to Lily, holding up his stick like it was treasure. She praised him enthusiastically, and he beamed. What does your therapist say? I asked. About us. About this situation. That I have to accept whatever decision you make. That I can't control your healing or your timeline. That the best thing I can do is work on myself and hope that someday, if you're ready, you'll give me a chance to show you I've changed. That's good advice. I know. She smiled sadly. I wish I'd gotten it sooner. When it could have prevented this instead of just trying to fix it after. We sat there for another hour. Mom didn't push, didn't ask to hold the kids or take photos or make plans for another meeting. She just existed beside me, watching my children play, being present without demanding anything. When it was time to leave, she stood up and thanked me again. Can I text you? She asked. Not often. Just sometimes. Yeah. You can text me. Okay. She looked like she wanted to hug me but knew better than to try. Thank you. I nodded and gathered the kids. As we walked to the car, Lily asked, Who was that lady? Someone I used to know. Will we see her again? I looked back at Mom, still standing by the bench, watching us leave. Maybe, I said. We'll see. Over the following months, we met a few more times. Always at the park. Always brief. Mom learned the kids' favorite colors, their favorite snacks, the way Lily loved to tell elaborate stories, and Marcus was obsessed with construction vehicles. She never overstepped. Never tried to be grandma without permission. Never brought Riley or mentioned her much, beyond acknowledging that my sister was still struggling, still angry, still unwilling to look at her own part in our family's dysfunction. David asked how I felt after each meeting. Sometimes I said fine. Sometimes I said confused. Once I said hopeful, and the word scared me as soon as it left my mouth. Because hope meant vulnerability. Hope meant caring again. And caring meant the possibility of being hurt. But slowly, carefully, something started to shift. I started to see Mom not as the villain of my story but as a flawed, complicated person who'd made terrible choices and was genuinely trying to do better. That didn't erase what she'd done. It didn't make up for the lost years or the birthdays she'd ruined or the countless times she'd chosen Riley over me. But it was something. 6 months after that first park meeting, on Lily's 5th birthday, I invited Mom to the party. Just her. I was clear about the boundaries. She was a family friend, not grandma, and if Riley called or texted trying to show up uninvited, Mom needed to handle it. She agreed without hesitation. The party was small, just a few of Lily's preschool friends, Jenna and her kids, David's parents who'd driven up from 2 states away. We had it at our house, in our backyard with a modest little fence and the garden I'd been trying unsuccessfully to grow. Mom arrived with a gift, a book about cardinals, beautifully illustrated. She gave it to Lily with a simple happy birthday, and Lily, who loved books, hugged it to her chest and said thank you in that sweet, unself-conscious way kids have. I watched Mom watching Lily, and I saw it in her face, the grief of all she'd missed. Not just with my kids, but with me. All the birthdays and milestones and ordinary moments that add up to a life. She could never get those back. Neither could I. But maybe, just maybe, we could build something new. Something different. Something that acknowledged the past without being imprisoned by it. After the party, after the kids were in bed and the house was quiet, David found me sitting on the back porch. You okay? He asked. I think so. That was a big step. Inviting her. It was. I pulled my niece up to my chest. Did you see the book she brought Lily? The cardinal one? Yeah. That was thoughtful. She remembered. After all these years, she remembered something about me. Does that change anything? I thought about it. It doesn't change what happened. But it changes what might happen next. It makes me think that maybe she really is trying. That maybe this isn't just guilt talking but actual change. And if it is? If she really has changed? What then? Then I guess we take it slow. Keep the boundaries. See where it goes. Let the kids know her as they get older, with age-appropriate explanations. Let them form their own relationships with her, independent of my history. And Riley? Riley can stay away until she's ready to acknowledge her part in everything. I'm not subjecting my kids to her just because we share DNA. David wrapped his arm around me. You're handling this really well, you know. Better than most people would. I don't know about that. I do. You're protecting yourself and the kids, but you're also leaving the door open for something good. That takes courage. I leaned against him, feeling the solid warmth of him, the safety. I couldn't do this without you. You know that, right? Yeah, I know. But you could. You're stronger than you think. Maybe he was right. Years ago, I'd been strong enough to leave. Now I was strong enough to consider letting someone back in, on my own terms, with my eyes wide open. That was its own kind of revenge, I realized. Not against Mom, but against the girl I used to be, the one who thought she had to accept whatever scraps of love were thrown her way. The one who believed she didn't deserve better. I deserved better. I built better. And if Mom wanted to be part of this life I'd built, she'd have to earn it. Day by day, boundary by boundary, proof by proof. The real revenge wasn't making them hurt the way I'd hurt. It was building a life so full and rich and good that I got to choose, from a position of strength, whether or not they got to be part of it. I chose me years ago. And I was still choosing me now. Every single day. A year passed. Then another. Mom became a consistent presence in our lives, not central but there. She came to Lily's dance recitals and Marcus's preschool graduation. She babysat occasionally, always at our house, always with clear guidelines. She sent birthday cards that arrived on time. She remembered allergies and bedtimes and the way Marcus wouldn't eat anything green. She proved herself. Slowly. Carefully. The first time Lily called her grandma, it happened naturally. We were at the zoo, and Lily grabbed Mom's hand, pulling her toward the penguin exhibit. Come on, Grandma, you have to see this. Mom looked at me, questioning. Asking permission without words. I nodded. She smiled, really smiled, not the careful, cautious smile she'd been wearing for months, and let Lily pull her forward. David squeezed my hand. You okay with that? Yeah, I said, surprised to find it was true. I think I am. Riley remained absent from our lives. Mom said she'd moved to another state, was trying to find herself, was still working through her own issues. I didn't ask for details. That door stayed closed, and I was content to leave it that way. Some wounds don't heal. Some relationships can't be salvaged. And that's okay. The second time I saw Riley after the restaurant, it was completely by accident. I was at the grocery store, Marcus in the shopping cart, Lily walking beside me practicing her letters by reading every sign she saw. I turned the corner into the cereal aisle and there she was. Riley looked different. Thinner. Tired. Her hair was shorter, her clothes less carefully chosen. She was reaching for a box of the sugary cereal we'd fought over as kids, the one Mom would only buy for her. Our eyes met. For a second, neither of us moved. Then Lily said, Mommy, can we get the dinosaur cereal? And the spell broke. Riley's gaze dropped to my kids. Something complicated crossed her face, recognition, loss, anger, regret, all tangled together. Hi, I said. Not warm, not cold. Just acknowledgement. Hi. Her voice was different too. Less sharp. Your kids? Yeah. They look like you. Thanks. Silence stretched between us. I could feel the years in it, all the things we'd never said and probably never would. Mom told me she's been seeing you, Riley finally said. Yeah. That's good. She's different now. Better. She is. Riley shifted her weight, uncomfortable. I'm not trying to, I'm not asking to be part of your life or anything. I just wanted you to know I'm glad she's getting a chance to fix things. Even if I'm not. There was something in her voice that might have been genuine. Might have been another manipulation. With Riley, I'd never be sure. I hope you find what you're looking for, I said. And meant it. Not for her sake, but for mine. Because holding on to anger was exhausting, and indifference was easier. Yeah. You too. She paused. You look happy. I am. Good. And maybe she meant that too. She walked past me, her shopping basket nearly empty, and disappeared around the corner. I stood there for a moment, processing. Who was that? Lily asked. Someone I used to know. Like Grandma? Sort of. But different. Lily accepted this with the easy certainty of a child who trusts her parents to handle complicated things. Can we get the dinosaur cereal? Yes. We can get the dinosaur cereal. That night, I told David about running into Riley. How did it feel? He asked. Weird. Not as bad as I thought it would be. Just sad. She looked lost. Do you want to reach out to her? No. The answer came easily. That's not my job anymore. Maybe it never was. She has to find her own way, just like I did. And if she tries to reach out to you? Then I'll deal with it when it happens. But I'm not holding my breath. David nodded, understanding without needing more explanation. That was one of the things I loved most about him. He never pushed me to forgive people who'd hurt me, never suggested I give more than I was willing to give. 3 years after the restaurant, Mom was a regular fixture in our lives. She'd met David's parents, came to Sunday dinners once a month, had her own relationship with Lily and Marcus that was separate from her relationship with me. It wasn't perfect. Sometimes old patterns would surface. She'd be too soft with the kids when they needed discipline, or she'd make a comment that reminded me of the old days. But when I called her out on it, she'd apologize. Really apologize. And adjust. That was the difference. She was trying. Actually trying. One evening, after the kids were asleep and Mom was about to leave, she lingered at the door. Can I tell you something? She asked. Sure. I know I can never make up for what I did. The years I stole from both of us. The pain I caused. I know that. Okay. But being part of your life now, seeing the family you've built, watching you be the mother I should have been, it's the greatest gift you could have given me. Even though I didn't deserve it. My throat tightened. You're earning it. Every day, you're earning it. I hope so. She smiled, sad and genuine. Your kids are lucky to have you. I know. She laughed at that, surprised. Good. You should know. You should always know. After she left, I stood in the doorway for a long time, thinking about the journey that had brought us here. From that night years ago when I walked out with nothing but a duffel bag and hurt, to this moment where I could stand in my own home, with my own family, and choose to let someone back in without losing myself in the process. This was the real ending. Not the restaurant confrontation, not the phone call, not even the first park meeting. This, the slow, complicated, imperfect rebuilding of something that had been shattered. I walked through my house, checking locks, turning off lights. I passed Lily's room, where she slept with her cardinal book on her nightstand. Marcus's room, where he'd somehow ended up sleeping upside down with his feet on his pillow. I found David in our bedroom, already in bed, reading. You coming to bed? He asked. Yeah. Just thinking. About? About how far we've come. How different this is from what I grew up with. How we're breaking cycles and building new ones. He set his book down. You did that. You broke those cycles. We did it. Together. Together, he agreed. I climbed into bed beside him, and he pulled me close. Safe. Loved. Chosen every day. Tomorrow, I'd wake up and do it all again, be a mother, be a wife, be a person who'd survived and then thrived. I'd probably text Mom about dinner plans. I'd definitely argue with Lily about wearing a coat to school. I'd chase Marcus around the house trying to get him dressed. I'd go to work and come home and live my beautifully ordinary life. And somewhere, Riley would still be trying to find herself. Mom would still be working in therapy to be better. The past would still exist, unchangeable and imperfect. But I'd be here. In the life I built. With the family I chose and the family that chose me back. That's the story. That's the revenge. Not destruction or payback or watching them suffer. Just living well. Just building something beautiful from ashes. Just proving that walking away from toxicity isn't running away, it's running towards something better. Years ago, I left with $347 and a duffel bag. Now I have everything. And it's not because they gave it to me. It's because I gave it to myself. That's what they saw in the restaurant that night. That's what broke something in Riley and woke something in Mom. The realization that I hadn't just survived without them. I'd flourished. And that's the truest revenge there is, living so well that their absence stops mattering. Building something so solid that their presence becomes optional instead of essential. I chose me. I'm still choosing me. And every day that choice becomes easier, more natural, more right. This is my life now. Messy and beautiful and hard and good. Full of people who love me without conditions and children who'll never know what it feels like to be invisible in their own home. This is what winning looks like. Not a dramatic confrontation or a perfect ending. Just peace. Just joy. Just the quiet confidence of knowing I'm enough. I was always enough. I just had to leave to figure that out.
Story 2.
My mother-in-law uninvited me from Christmas because you ruined the family photo last year by being pregnant. My husband stared in disbelief, but she said, family only. We stayed home with our 6-month-old. On Christmas morning, they posted their perfect photos. I smiled and sipped my coffee. At 11 a.m., my father-in-law called, "We need the keys to the lake house for New Year's. You're still not invited." I paused, then replied. Of course. The keys are in the lockbox. Code is still 2847. My husband looked at me like I'd lost my mind. Maybe I had. But I smiled wider and hung up. See, here's what they didn't know about that lake house. The lake house wasn't theirs. It was mine. Let me back up, because this gets complicated in the best possible way, and you need to understand how deeply satisfying every single second of this became. 3 years ago, my grandmother passed away. She left me everything, her estate, her savings, and her beloved property on Lake Hartwell. A modest 2-bedroom cabin with a screened porch and a dock that stretched out over water so clear you could see the stones at the bottom. She'd bought it in 1987 for next to nothing, back when the area was just woods and humidity and the occasional fisherman. By the time she died, lakefront property there was worth a small fortune. I'd spent every summer there as a kid. I learned to swim off that dock. I caught fireflies in mason jars on that porch. When she got sick, I was the one who drove 6 hours every weekend to sit with her at the hospice facility near her main house in Atlanta, to make her soup, to hold her hand while she told me stories about my grandfather and their life together. The lake house itself was only 3 hours from where Michael and I lived, but my grandmother had moved to Atlanta for medical care in her final years, and that's where I went, week after week, making that long drive to be with her. My parents had moved to Arizona by then. My brother was overseas with the military. It was just me. And when she died, she made sure I knew the cabin was mine, no conditions, no debates, just mine. My mother-in-law, Patricia, found out about it 2 weeks after the funeral. We were at Sunday dinner, this mandatory weekly event at their house where Patricia presided over a dining table like a throne and judged everything from your posture to your choice of bread. I'd mentioned the cabin in passing, something about needing to drive up and winterize it before the cold set in. Patricia's fork stopped halfway to her mouth. "You inherited a lake house?" I nodded, suddenly wary. Her tone had that sharp edge, the one she used when she was about to say something that sounded like a question but was really an accusation. "And it's worth how much?" My husband, Michael, bless him, he tries, jumped in. "Mom, it's not really. I'm asking her, Michael." I took a breath. It was appraised at around $400,000. Silence. Patricia's face did this thing where it stayed perfectly still, but her eyes got smaller, harder. Like she was doing math in her head and didn't like the sum. "Well," she said finally, her voice tripping with that fake sweetness she used when she was furious. "Isn't that lucky for you?" Lucky? As if luck had anything to do with the years I'd spent driving back and forth, the nights I'd slept in a hospital chair, the way I'd rearranged my entire life to be there for my grandmother when no one else could. But I didn't say that. I just smiled and said, "Yes. Very lucky." Patricia dabbed her mouth with her napkin, this delicate, precise gesture that somehow managed to convey contempt. "I suppose Michael's family will get to enjoy it now too." And there it was. The pivot. The claim. "We'd love to have you visit sometime," I said carefully. "Oh, we'll do more than visit," Patricia said, laughing. "Family properties should be for family, don't you think? We'll plan a reunion up there this summer. The whole family." Michael squeezed my hand under the table. A warning or an apology, I couldn't tell. I didn't argue. Not then. But I also didn't agree. What I did do, quietly and without fanfare, was exactly nothing. I didn't extend an open invitation. I didn't plan a reunion. When summer came and Patricia started dropping hints about that lovely cabin you have, I stayed vague. Busy with work. Maybe another time. The place needs repairs. She didn't push. Not at first. Patricia was strategic. She waited. The opportunity came when I got pregnant. It wasn't planned, but it also wasn't unwanted. Michael and I had been married 2 years, we talked about kids eventually, and when I saw those 2 pink lines, I felt this unexpected surge of joy. We told his family at Sunday dinner, another command performance, and Patricia's reaction was all the right words with all the wrong energy. Oh, how wonderful. A grandchild. Michael, you're going to be a father. But her smile was tight. Her hug was brief. And when she looked at me, really looked at me, there was something calculating in her expression. The next few months were a blur of doctor's appointments and nausea and trying to keep up with work while my body staged a full-scale rebellion. Patricia called constantly. Always with questions that felt less like concern and more like surveillance. How was I feeling? Was I still working? Had we thought about names? Was I sure I should be doing so much? The criticism came wrapped in care, which somehow made it worse. You look tired, dear. Are you sure you're taking care of yourself? That's an interesting choice for maternity clothes. Very bold. Michael says you're still going to the gym? I don't know, I always believed in being cautious during pregnancy. But every woman is different, I suppose. Michael noticed but didn't know how to stop it. He tried to redirect her, change the subject, but Patricia had this way of circling back, of making her point without ever quite saying what she meant. The worst part was how she turned every milestone into an opportunity to remind me of my inadequacies. When we found out we were having a girl, Patricia spent 20 minutes at Sunday dinner telling stories about how she'd known exactly what to do with Jennifer, how mothering daughters required a special touch, how some women just had the instinct and others had to learn the hard way. Girls are so different from boys, she'd said, dabbing her mouth with her napkin in that precise way she had. They need a gentle hand. Firm guidance but never too strict. You have to know when to push and when to pull back. It's intuitive, really. Some mothers just have it. The implication was clear, I wouldn't be one of those mothers. When we picked out a name, Sophia, after my grandmother, Patricia's face went tight for just a moment before she recovered. Oh. How? Traditional. I suppose you'll call her Sophie? Sophia, I said firmly. Her full name. Of course. Whatever you think is best. The words said one thing, her tone said another. She'd wanted us to consider family names from Michael's side. Patricia's mother had been named Eleanor, and she dropped hints for weeks about how lovely it would be to honor that legacy. But my grandmother had meant everything to me, and I wasn't about to let Patricia dictate this decision too. The nursery became another battlefield. Patricia had opinions about everything. The paint color was too bright, the crib was positioned wrong according to some philosophy she'd read about, the changing table wasn't the brand she'd used and therefore must be inferior. She showed up unannounced one Saturday with a bag full of decorations, pale pink things with ruffles and bows that looked like they'd been imported from a Victorian dollhouse. I thought you could use these, she'd said, already pulling them out. Every little girl needs some feminine touches. I'd wanted something simple and modern, soft grays and whites with pops of yellow. The kind of nursery that felt calm and peaceful, not frilly and overwhelming. That's very thoughtful, I'd said, my jaw tight. But we've already decorated. Oh, this is just to add to it. You can never have too much sweetness for a baby girl. Michael had intervened then, gently but firmly. Mom, we've got it handled. But thank you. She'd left the bag anyway. It sat in the corner of the nursery for 2 weeks before I finally donated it all to a thrift store. The baby shower she threw for me in my 6th month was a masterclass in subtle humiliation. She invited all her friends, women I'd never met, women who spent the entire time talking to Patricia about her memories of being pregnant with Michael and Jennifer, who cooed over the gifts Patricia had selected and barely glanced at the ones I'd chosen for the registry. I sat in the center of that living room, wearing a dress Patricia had picked out, something frilly and pale pink that made me look like an overgrown child, and owed presents while she narrated. Oh, that's for me. I remembered how much Michael loved that mobile when he was tiny. Those blankets are the exact same ones I used. Nothing's better than the classics. Now, you'll want to be careful with that baby monitor. The new technology is fine, but you can't beat the simple ones we had back in my day. Every comment positioned her as the expert and me as the novice who would inevitably mess things up. Michael sat beside me, holding my hand, and I could feel his frustration, but he didn't say anything. He never did. And then came last Christmas. I was 7 months pregnant by then. Uncomfortable in a way that defied description, my back ached constantly, my feet were swollen, and I had this permanent heartburn that no amount of antacids could touch. But it was Christmas, and Patricia had made it clear that attendance at the family gathering was non-negotiable. Everyone will be there, she'd said on the phone. And we're doing a professional photo session this year. I've hired a photographer and everything. It's going to be perfect. Perfect. That word should have been a warning. We arrived at their house to find it transformed into something out of a magazine spread. White and silver decorations, a massive tree dripping with coordinated ornaments, and Patricia in a cream cashmere sweater that probably cost more than our mortgage payment. "Oh," she said when she opened the door and saw me. "You wore red." I looked down at my dress, a soft red maternity dress that was one of the few things that still fit. "Is that a problem?" No, of course not. It's just. The color scheme is more neutral this year. But it's fine. We'll make it work. We didn't make it work. The photo session was a nightmare. The photographer, this nervous young woman who kept glancing at Patricia for approval, arranged us on and around the sofa. Patricia orchestrated every detail. Who stood where? Who sat where? How we should angle our bodies. And then she looked at me, at my very pregnant belly in that red dress, and said to the photographer, "Can we do some shots with just the core family first?" I blinked. "I'm sorry?" "Just Michael and his father and me and his sister. The original family unit. Then we'll do some with everyone." Michael's sister, Jennifer, looked uncomfortable. Michael's father, Richard, studied his shoes. Michael opened his mouth to object, but I touched his arm. "It's fine," I said quietly. "I'll wait in the kitchen." I spent 20 minutes in that kitchen, eating cheese cubes off the appetizer tray and listening to Patricia's voice drifting from the other room, directing poses, demanding smiles. When they finally called me back in, Patricia positioned me on the end of the sofa, partially behind Michael, angled in a way that minimized my stomach. "Just try to sit up straight, dear. And maybe turn slightly to the left. We don't want the baby to be the main focus." Something cold settled in my chest. But I smiled. I posed. I did exactly what she wanted. Later, when the photos came back and Patricia posted them on social media with a long caption about her beautiful family and blessed to have everyone together, there were exactly 3 photos that included me. In all of them, I was either cut off at the edge of the frame, blurred slightly in the background, or positioned in a way that made me look like an afterthought. The photos of the core family were pinned to the top of her page, highlighted and shared and commented on by dozens of her friends. I said nothing. Michael fumed privately but didn't confront his mother. And I filed that moment away in a place in my brain where I kept all the other small humiliations, the tiny cuts that individually meant nothing but together formed a pattern. Then came this year. Baby Sophia was born in June. 6 pounds, 7 ounces, perfect in every way that mattered. Those first few months were a haze of sleeplessness and love and the kind of bone-deep exhaustion that made time feel liquid. We barely left the house. Sunday dinners were put on hold. Patricia's calls went increasingly to voicemail. When we finally emerged from the newborn fog in October, Patricia made it clear she was displeased. "I've barely seen my granddaughter," she said, her voice sharp with accusation. "You could have brought her over. I would have helped." But she wouldn't have helped. She would have criticized. She would have commented on how I was holding the baby wrong, feeding her wrong, dressing her wrong. She would have made me feel incompetent in my own motherhood the way she'd made me feel incompetent in everything else. So I kept my distance and made excuses and let Michael handle most of the family communication. Which brings us to 3 weeks ago. Michael got the call on a Tuesday evening. He was giving Sophia her bottle while I tried to salvage dinner, something involving chicken that I'd forgotten about until the smoke alarm reminded me, and I heard his voice go tight. "Mom, I don't think that's what." "No, you can't just." I turned off the stove and walked into the living room. Michael's face was pale. "Okay," he said finally. "I'll talk to her." He hung up and looked at me with this expression that was equal parts apologetic and horrified. "My mother uninvited you to Christmas." I laughed. Actually laughed, because it was so absurd. "She what?" "She said," he stopped, swallowed. "She said that you ruined the family photos last year by being pregnant, and this year they want to do it right. She said Christmas is for family only." The words hit me like a physical blow. Not the content, I'd expected Patricia to say something terrible eventually, but the casualness of it. The matter-of-fact cruelty. She said that to you? About me? About your wife? I told her it was ridiculous. I said we're a package deal, that if you're not invited, we're not coming. And she said, he paused again, and I could see him struggling with whether to tell me. She said that was fine. That Sophia was welcome, of course, but maybe this year it would be better if it was just blood relatives. Blood relatives. As if marriage meant nothing. As if the vows we'd spoken, the life we'd built, the child we'd created together, none of it counted because I didn't share Patricia's genetic material. I sat down on the couch, carefully, because I was shaking. So what did you say? I said we weren't coming. I said if you weren't welcome, neither was I, and she hung up on me. We didn't go to Christmas. We stayed home, just the three of us, and it was actually lovely. Quiet. Peaceful. We made cinnamon rolls for breakfast and let Sophia tear wrapping paper while we drank coffee in our pajamas. But around noon, my phone started buzzing with notifications. Patricia had posted the family photos. Christmas morning at the house, everyone arranged around the tree in coordinated outfits, whites and creams and soft grays, looking like they'd stepped out of a catalog. The caption read, "Blessed beyond measure. Family is everything." Michael saw me looking and came to sit beside me. "I'm sorry," he said quietly. I wasn't sure what he was apologizing for. His mother's cruelty? His inability to stop it? The years of small humiliations that had led to this moment? I smiled at him. It's okay. We had a nice day. And we had. But something had shifted. Something had crystallized. Then came the call from Richard at 11 a.m. on Christmas Day. I answered because Michael was changing Sophia's diaper, and because some part of me was curious what new insult they devised. "Hi, Richard. Merry Christmas." Yes, same to you." He sounded distracted, impatient. "Listen, Patricia wants me to get the keys to your lake house. We're planning to go up for New Year's. Just the family. You're still not invited, obviously, but we'll need access to the property." The audacity of it stole my breath. The sheer entitlement. "The lake house," I repeated slowly. "Yes, the one you inherited. Patricia says it's been sitting empty, which is a waste, and we thought we'd ring in the new year up there. The whole family. Real quality time. So we'll need those keys by tomorrow if possible. We're planning to drive up on the 30th. I could have said many things. I could have screamed. I could have hung up. I could have unleashed 3 years of accumulated rage in one cathartic explosion. Instead, I paused. And then I said, very calmly, "Of course. The keys are in the lockbox on the front porch. Code is still 2847. Excellent. Patricia will be pleased. Oh, and we'll probably stay through the second, so don't worry if you don't hear from us." He hung up before I could respond. Michael came back into the room with Sophia on his hip. "Who was that?" "Your father. He wants the keys to the lake house for New Year's." Michael's expression darkened. "Absolutely not. You're not giving them. I already did." He stared at me. "What?" I told him the code to the lockbox. "But why would you?" He stopped, studying my face. "What are you planning?" I smiled. "Nothing. I'm just being a good daughter-in-law." Here's what I hadn't told them about the lake house. What I hadn't told anyone except the lawyer who handled my grandmother's estate and the contractor who'd done the renovations. The property wasn't mine anymore. 6 months ago, I transferred ownership to a trust, specifically, a trust with Sophia as the sole beneficiary. I was the trustee, which meant I managed it, but legally, it belonged to my daughter. All very tidy, all perfectly legal, all designed to protect the property from any future complications. Like, say, my mother-in-law trying to claim partial ownership because family properties should be for family. I'd seen that coming from a mile away. Patricia was nothing if not predictable. The trust had been my lawyer's idea, actually. Sharon Michaels, a sharp woman in her 50s who'd handled my grandmother's estate, had suggested it during one of our meetings. "You're married," she'd said, shuffling through paperwork. "And while this property is yours through inheritance, acquired before the marriage, some people get creative about trying to claim marital interest. Especially if improvements are made during the marriage. Your best protection, especially with a child now, is to establish a trust." "Won't that look suspicious?" I'd asked. "Like I'm trying to hide assets?" "You're not hiding anything. You're protecting your daughter's inheritance. It's a common estate planning tool. We'll structure it properly, file all the appropriate paperwork, and it'll be completely above board. So that's what we've done. Transferred the deed, established the trust, filed everything with the county. All perfectly legal, all meticulously documented. But here's where it gets interesting. The trust had rules. Very specific rules. Only the trustee could grant access. Only the trustee could give permission for use. And anyone using the property without explicit written authorization from the trustee was, legally speaking, trespassing. I'd put it in writing. I'd had it notarized. I'd filed it with the county. And 2 weeks before Christmas, I'd done something else. Something I'd been planning since Patricia's comments about family properties began. I drafted a certified letter, formal, legal, leaving no room for misinterpretation. It stated clearly that Richard and Patricia did not have permission to use the lake house property at any time, for any reason, without explicit written authorization from me as the trustee. I'd had it notarized, I'd made copies, and I'd sent it via certified mail to their address. I had the tracking number. I had the receipt. I had proof of delivery showing it had been signed for on December 12th. Whether they'd actually opened it or read it? That wasn't my problem. But it meant that when Richard called asking for those keys, I wasn't lying when I gave him the code. The keys were real. The code was real. The permission? That was very much not real. And I had documentation proving I'd explicitly denied them access. Michael was suspicious but didn't push too hard. He knew me well enough to know that when I got quiet like this, something was brewing. On December 30th, Patricia posted a photo of their SUV packed to the roof with luggage, coolers, and shopping bags. The caption, "New Year's at the lake. Can't wait to ring in the new year in style." 47 people liked it. 12 people commented about how lucky they were, how beautiful the lake must be this time of year, how they wish they could join. I liked the post. Michael looked at me like I'd grown a second head. "Trust me," I said. I spent the afternoon of December 31st doing something I'd been avoiding for months. I sat down with my laptop and went through every single one of Patricia's social media posts from the past 2 years. Every Sunday dinner photo where I was conspicuously absent. Every family gathering I'd been excluded from or minimized in. Every post about her family that somehow never included me. I took screenshots. I organized them chronologically. I created a file. I wasn't sure yet if I'd need it, but I've learned that documentation is power. On December 31st, at precisely 10 a.m., I called the county sheriff's office. "Hi, I'd like to report a trespassing situation on my property." The deputy who answered, a woman named Garcia with a no-nonsense voice, took down the details. Address of the lake house. Description of the vehicle. Number of people involved. "And you're sure they don't have permission to be there?" Garcia asked. "I'm absolutely certain. I sent them a certified letter on December 5th, received on December 12th, explicitly denying them access to the property. I have all the documentation." "You have proof of that?" "Certified mail receipt, tracking information showing delivery, and a signed return receipt. I also have the trust documents showing my legal authority over the property and specific clause about unauthorized access constituting trespassing." There was a pause. I could almost hear her sitting up straighter. "We'll send a deputy out to check the situation," Garcia said. "Can you email me copies of that documentation?" "I can send it right now." I hung up and immediately forwarded everything to the email address she provided. The certified letter. The return receipt. The trust documents. The property deed. Everything organized, labeled, and professional. Then I made myself a cup of tea and waited. It took 3 hours. At 1:15 p.m., my phone rang. Unknown number. I let it go to voicemail. The message was Patricia, and she was screaming. Actual screaming, her voice so high and strained I could barely make out the words. Something about police, humiliation, and how dare I? At 1:22 p.m., she called again. This time I answered. "Hello? What the heck did you do?" Patricia's voice was shrill, verging on hysterical. "The police are here. They're saying we have to leave. They're treating us like criminals." "That's terrible," I said, my voice full of manufactured sympathy. "Why would they do that? They said you called them. They said you reported us for trespassing." "Well, yes. You were trespassing. We had your permission. Richard asked you for the keys." "He asked for the keys. I gave him the code to the lockbox. I never gave you permission to use the property." That's insane. Why would you give us the keys if we couldn't use them? I gave you access to the keys, I said calmly. I didn't give you access to the property. There's a difference. A legal difference. You conniving little, Patricia, I sent you a certified letter on December 5th explicitly informing you that you didn't have permission to use the lake house. The post office confirms it was delivered on December 12th. You signed for it yourself. Silence. Then, we never read any letter. That's not my problem. Ignorance of notice doesn't invalidate the notice. I have proof it was sent and received. Now, I suggest you leave the property before the deputy decides to press charges. Trespassing can carry pretty serious consequences, especially when there's documented notice. We didn't break anything. We used keys. Unauthorized use of keys to access property without permission is still trespassing in this county. I checked. Thoroughly. I had checked. Thoroughly. I'd spent 2 weeks researching property law, trespassing statutes, and tenant rights. I talked to Sharon, who'd confirmed every detail. I'd made absolutely sure that every single thing I was doing was not just legal, but airtight. Patricia was breathing hard on the other end of the line. You planned this. You set us up. I protected my property. And my daughter's inheritance. That's all. Richard is furious. Jennifer is crying. You've ruined our entire holiday. That's unfortunate. Maybe next time you'll think twice before uninviting someone from Christmas because they're pregnant. Or before assuming you have rights to property that doesn't belong to you. Michael will hear about this. Michael knows. He's known from the beginning. He supported my decision. This was somewhat true. Michael hadn't known about the sheriff's call, but he'd known about the trust, and he'd known about the letter, and he'd agreed that protecting Sophia's inheritance was important. Patricia made a sound that was somewhere between a sob and a growl. This isn't over. Actually, it is. Have a safe drive home, Patricia. And next time you want to use someone else's property, maybe try asking nicely. Family only, remember? I hung up. The dopamine rush was immediate and overwhelming. My hands were shaking. My heart was racing. I'd just blown up my relationship with my in-laws in spectacular fashion, and instead of feeling guilty or scared, I felt light. Giddy, almost. I sat down at the kitchen table and let myself feel it, all of it. The satisfaction. The vindication. The sheer relief of finally pushing back after years of being pushed. My phone buzzed. Another call from Patricia. I declined it. Then a text from Richard, "This is outrageous. We're family. How could you do this?" I typed back, "Family respects boundaries. You crossed mine." Then I blocked his number. Another text, this time from Jennifer, "Please tell me what's happening. Mom is losing it and Dad won't talk to me." I felt a pang of guilt about Jennifer. She'd always been caught in the middle, uncomfortable with her mother's behavior but too conflict-averse to call it out. But this wasn't her fight, and I wasn't going to let her position as neutral bystander pull me into explaining myself. "Your parents trespassed on my property after I explicitly denied them permission in writing. I called the authorities. That's all there is to it." She didn't respond right away. When she did, it was just, "Okay." Michael got home 20 minutes later with Sophia and a bag of groceries. He took one look at my face and said, "What happened?" I told him everything. The sheriff's call. Patricia's meltdown. The letter they'd signed for but apparently never read. He was quiet for a long moment. Then he started laughing. "You're brilliant. Absolutely brilliant. You're not mad?" "Mad? My mother has been treating you like garbage for years. She uninvited you from Christmas. She called you on Christmas Day to demand access to your property while explicitly telling you that you still weren't welcome. And you outmaneuvered her using nothing but paperwork and county regulations." I'm in awe. He kissed me, hard, and then pulled back to look at me seriously. "But you know she's going to retaliate, right? She's not going to let this go." "I know. And you're okay with that?" I thought about it. About the years of subtle digs and backhanded compliments. About last Christmas and the photos where I'd been erased. About being told I wasn't family while they demanded access to my inheritance. I'm okay with that. Patricia tried calling 4 more times that evening. Michael finally answered and spent 20 minutes listening to her rant about disrespect and betrayal and how I'd always been a bad influence on him. He mostly just said and I understand you're upset until she exhausted herself and hung up. Richard sent a text at 11:47 p.m, "You've made a terrible mistake. Family doesn't treat family this way. I replied, I agree. You should have thought of that before Christmas. He didn't respond. New Year's Eve came and went quietly. We stayed home, watched the ball drop on TV, and toasted with sparkling cider while Sophia slept upstairs. Around 12:30 a.m., Michael's phone buzzed with a text from Jennifer. Mom is threatening to hire a lawyer. She says you stole family property. Michael showed me the message. I shrugged. Let her try. The property was never hers. She has no claim. She might argue that it should be considered marital property or something. It was inherited before we got married. And it's in Sophia's trust now. There's no legal angle she can pursue. Sharon made sure of that. She might try anyway. Out of spite. Then she'll waste a lot of money on legal fees and lose. He looked at me with something like admiration. When did you get so ruthless? I'm not ruthless. I'm just done being walked on. The next morning, January 1st, I woke up to find Patricia had posted on social media again. This time, the post was longer. More detailed. And very, very carefully worded. Heartbroken today. When you welcome someone into your family, you expect loyalty, gratitude, and respect. Instead, we've learned that some people are only interested in what they can take. Material possessions matter more to some than relationships. We're praying for healing and forgiveness, but we will never understand cruelty disguised as righteousness. No names. No specifics. But anyone who knew the family would know exactly who she was talking about. The comments poured in. Her friends, mostly women her age who seemed to spend their entire lives on social media, rallied around her with sympathy and outrage. So sorry you're dealing with this. Family should come first. Always. Some people just don't appreciate what they have. Praying for you during this difficult time. I read through them with a strange detachment. A month ago, this would have devastated me. The public shaming, the implication that I was selfish and cruel, the way she'd positioned herself as the victim, it would have made me want to defend myself, to explain, to make her understand. Now? I just felt tired. Michael saw the post and immediately called his mother. I could hear her voice through the phone, sharp and self-righteous. You need to delete that post, Michael said. Now. I didn't name anyone. I'm allowed to share my feelings. You're allowed to be petty and manipulative? You're allowed to lie about what happened? I'm not lying. She refused to let us use the property and call the police on us. On New Year's Eve. Because you were trespassing. Because you demanded access to something that doesn't belong to you. It should belong to the family. It belongs to Sophia. Your granddaughter. And if you keep this up, you won't have a relationship with her at all. Silence. Then Patricia's voice, colder than I'd ever heard it, are you threatening me? I'm telling you the truth. Delete the post. Apologize to my wife. Or accept that we're done. She hung up on him. The post stayed up. Michael was quiet for the rest of the day. I could see him wrestling with something, loyalty, guilt, the desire to fix what felt irreparably broken. That evening, after we put Sophia to bed, he sat down next to me on the couch and took my hand. I'm sorry, he said. For what? For not standing up to her sooner. For letting it get this bad. For making you feel like you had to handle this alone. You didn't make me feel that way. I didn't stop her, either. I thought if I just kept the peace, if I didn't rock the boat, eventually she'd come around. But she never was going to, was she? I squeezed his hand. Probably not. What do we do now? We live our lives. We raise our daughter. We don't let her toxicity touch us anymore. It's that simple? It's that hard. He laughed, but it was a sad sound. I always thought family was supposed to be the one thing you could count on. Family is what you make it. Not what you're born into. We sat there in the quiet, and I thought about my grandmother. About the summers at the lake house. About the way she'd loved me without conditions, without judgment, without keeping score. That was family? The next few weeks were strange. Patricia didn't call. Richard didn't text. Jennifer sent a few apologetic messages to Michael, saying she understood why we'd done what we did but she missed us and wished things could go back to normal. Normal? As if there'd ever been a normal to return to. I went back to work. I worked remotely as a marketing consultant, and threw myself into projects. Michael went back to his job at an engineering firm. We fell into a routine that didn't include Sunday dinners or obligatory phone calls or the constant low-level anxiety of waiting for the next criticism. It was peaceful. Almost unsettlingly so. Then, in late January, the lawyer's letter arrived. Patricia had hired an attorney. The letter, 3 pages of dense legal language, claimed that the lake house should be considered marital property because improvements had been made during our marriage, that Michael had an ownership interest through common law precedent, and that I had engaged in fraudulent transfer by moving the property into a trust without his consent. It was nonsense. Completely baseless. But it was also expensive nonsense that would require me to hire my own lawyer to respond to. I called Sharon immediately. "Can they win?" I asked after she'd read through the letter. "No. Not even close. This is grasping at straws. The property was yours through inheritance before the marriage. No improvements were made with marital funds, you have documentation of that, right? Every repair, every bill, all from my inheritance money or my personal income. Nothing from joint accounts. Perfect. And that trust was established with proper legal procedures, for legitimate estate planning purposes, and Michael was aware of it? He signed off on it. We have his signature on the trust documents. Then they have absolutely no case. This is intimidation, pure and simple. They're hoping you'll be scared enough to settle. I'm not settling. Good. I'll draft a response. It'll be thorough, professional, and it'll make it very clear that any further action will be considered harassment and could result in counterclaims for legal fees and emotional distress. Sharon's response was a thing of beauty. 6 pages of precise legal language systematically dismantling every claim, citing precedent, and making it clear that Patricia's attorney had either been misled by his client or hadn't done even basic due diligence. We sent it certified mail. Patricia's lawyer received it on February 9th. On February 10th, Patricia posted another social media update. Sometimes standing up for what's right means facing opposition. But we don't back down. We fight for family. We fight for justice. And we won't be silenced by bullies who think they can use money and lawyers to intimidate us. Bullies. She was calling me a bully. The irony was so thick I could have drowned in it. But this time, something interesting happened. The comments weren't universally supportive. A few people I didn't recognize, pushed back. But didn't your daughter-in-law inherit that property? Why would you have a claim to it? I'm confused. You said they were trespassing. Were they or weren't they? This seems like it's between you and your family. Why are you posting about it publicly? Patricia deleted those comments within hours. But more appeared. And the tone of the conversation started to shift. Michael's aunt, his father's sister, Caroline, called him that evening. "What's going on with your mother?" she asked. Michael explained, carefully, without editorializing. He laid out the facts, the inheritance, the uninvitation to Christmas, the demand to use the property, the trespassing, the lawsuit. Caroline was quiet for a long moment. Then she said, "Your mother has always had a sense of entitlement when it comes to other people's things. I'm sorry she put you in this position." "You believe us?" "I believe you. I also believe Patricia is furious that someone finally told her no." That conversation was the first domino. Within days, other family members started reaching out. Jennifer called, then a few cousins, then Richard's brother. Some wanted to mediate, to find a compromise. Some just wanted to understand what had happened. And some, not many, but enough, quietly made it clear that they thought Patricia had overstepped. The united front she'd expected didn't materialize. And slowly, the pressure started to shift from us to her. By mid-February, Patricia's lawyers sent a letter withdrawing their claim. No explanation. No apology. Just a terse notification that they were dropping the matter. Sharon called me with the news. They folded. Probably realized they had no case and didn't want to rack up more fees. It's over? Unless they try something else. But legally, yes. It's over. I should have felt relieved. Triumphant, even. Instead, I just felt exhausted. Vindicated, maybe, but also hollowed out by the months of tension. That evening, Michael and I sat on the porch, it was unseasonably warm for February, and watched Sophia play on a blanket in the grass. She was laughing at something only she could see, this pure, uncomplicated joy that made my chest ache. "Your mom dropped the lawsuit," I said. Michael nodded. "Jennifer told me. She said Patricia's been in a mood for days." "Do you think she'll ever apologize?" "No. She'll rationalize it somehow. Tell herself she was in the right and we were ungrateful." "Does that bother you?" He thought about it. "It used to. But I'm tired of trying to manage her feelings. I'm tired of pretending her behavior is normal just to keep the peace. So what do? We do what you said. We live our lives. We protect our daughter. And we don't let her toxicity touch us. We sat in the quiet for a while, listening to Sophia babble and the breeze rustle through the trees. You know what's weird? Michael said eventually. I always thought cutting off my parents would feel like losing something. But mostly it just feels like putting down something heavy. I understood exactly what he meant. Spring came slowly that year. The kind of gradual warming that makes you almost forget what cold felt like. Sophia started sitting up on her own, then pulling herself to standing, grabbing onto furniture and grinning like she'd invented physics. Every milestone felt like a small miracle, and every single one happened without Patricia's commentary or criticism. We didn't hear from Patricia. Or Richard. Jennifer sent occasional texts, updates about her life, questions about Sophia, careful messages that avoided mentioning her parents, and we responded, but it was different now. Lighter. Less fraught. In April, we drove up to the lake house for the first time since everything had happened. It was a Saturday morning, clear and bright, and the drive took 3 hours through back roads and small towns that hadn't changed in decades. When we pulled up to the cabin, Michael got out first and just stood there, looking at it. I forgot how beautiful it is, he said. I got Sophia out of her car seat and carried her down to the dock. The water was still cold, but the sun was warm, and there was this perfect stillness that felt like permission to breathe. This is yours, I told Sophia, even though she was too young to understand. Your great-great-grandmother built a life here. She wanted you to have it. To remember that you come from people who worked for what they had, who didn't expect things to be handed to them. Michael came up beside us and put his arm around my shoulders. Thank you, he said quietly. For what? For fighting for this. For her. For us. I leaned into him and watched Sophia reach for the water, her small hand grasping at reflections. We spent the weekend there, just the 3 of us. We grilled food on the ancient barbecue my grandfather had installed in 1989. We sat on the porch and watched the sun set over the water. We slept in the same bedroom I'd slept in as a child, with Sophia's travel crib next to our bed and the sound of crickets drifting through the screens. It felt like reclaiming something. Or maybe claiming it for the first time. On Sunday afternoon, as we were packing up to leave, a car pulled into the driveway. An older couple, neighbors, I realized, from the house 2 lots down, got out and walked over. You're Sarah's granddaughter? The woman asked. I am. I'm Margaret. This is Tom. We lived next door to your grandmother for 20 years. She talked about you all the time. We talked for a while, about my grandmother, about the property, about their own family and the way the area had changed over the years. Before they left, Margaret touched my arm. She was so proud of you, she said. And she was so glad this place would stay in the family. She used to worry about what would happen to it. I'll take care of it, I promised. I know you will. They left, and Michael loaded the last of our things into the car. As we drove away, I watched the cabin disappear in the rearview mirror and thought about legacy, not just property or money, but the things we pass down that can't be measured. Strength. Integrity. The willingness to stand up for what matters, even when it costs something. Especially when it costs something. June came, and with it Sophia's first birthday. We had a small party, just us and a few close friends, in our backyard. I made a cake that was more enthusiasm than skill, and Sophia smashed her fist into it with unrestrained delight, getting frosting in her hair and on her dress and absolutely everywhere else. I posted a photo on social media. Sophia mid-laugh, covered in cake, with the caption, 1 year of this beautiful chaos. Best year of my life. Patricia liked the post. I stared at that notification for a full minute, trying to figure out what it meant. An olive branch? An acknowledgement? Just an automatic click that meant nothing? Michael saw it too. Are you going to say anything to her? I don't know. Should I? That's up to you. I thought about it for days. Drafted messages in my head. Considered extending an invitation to talk, to reconcile, to find some way forward. But then I remembered last Christmas. The photos I'd been erased from. The way she'd called me family only when it suited her, and excluded me when it didn't. The lawsuit. The public posts. The systematic campaign to make me feel small and unwelcome and wrong. And I realized I didn't want to reconcile. I didn't want to extend an olive branch. I didn't want to pretend that liking a photo made up for years of calculated cruelty. What I wanted was peace. And I already had that. So I didn't respond to the like. I didn't reach out. I just kept living my life, working, raising Sophia, making plans for the future. In August, Richard had a health scare. Nothing serious, but enough to land him in the hospital overnight for observation. Jennifer called Michael, who called me, and there was this unspoken question hanging in the air: should we go see him? Do you want to? I asked Michael. I don't know. Part of me thinks I should. He's my father. And part of you? Part of me doesn't want to open that door again. Doesn't want to give them another chance to hurt us. We didn't go. Michael sent flowers and a card. Richard sent a text thanking him. That was it. I wondered if Patricia would use this as ammunition, proof that we were cold, unfeeling, bad family members. But if she did, we never heard about it. September brought cooler weather and the first hints of fall. Sophia started walking, these lurching, unsteady steps that ended in tumbles and giggles. Michael got a promotion at work. I landed a big client that would keep me busy through the end of the year. Life moved forward. Not perfectly, not without complications, but forward. And somewhere in all of that forward motion, I realized I'd stopped thinking about Patricia constantly. Stopped running conversations in my head, rehearsing what I'd say if she called. Stopped bracing for the next confrontation. She'd become irrelevant to my daily life. Not forgiven, not forgotten, but simply not a factor. There's power in that. In choosing what you give your energy to. In deciding that someone who tried to make you feel small doesn't get to live rent-free in your head anymore. Michael noticed the change. You seem lighter, he said one evening as we sat on the couch after putting Sophia to bed. I feel lighter. No regrets about how things ended up? I thought about it honestly. About the rift with his family. About the way we burned that bridge so completely there was no going back. No regrets, I said. Are you okay with that? I'm more than okay. I'm grateful. You taught me that it's okay to protect yourself, even from family. Especially from family sometimes. Your Aunt Caroline asked about Sophia last week. She wants to come visit. Yeah? I told her we'd love that. Because that was the thing Patricia never understood. Cutting her off didn't mean cutting off everyone. Didn't mean isolating ourselves or turning bitter. It just meant creating boundaries and enforcing them. It meant choosing who got access to our lives and who didn't. Caroline visited in October. She brought gifts for Sophia and stories about Michael as a kid, and she didn't mention Patricia once. It was easy and warm and uncomplicated in a way family gatherings had never been before. After she left, Michael said, I wish it had always been like that. Maybe it can be. Moving forward. Maybe. We went to the lake house again in November, just before the weather turned cold. The trees were brilliant with fall color, reds and oranges and yellows so bright they looked artificial. We walked along the shore with Sophia bundled in a jacket, pointing out leaves and ducks and clouds. Standing on the dock, watching the water reflect the sunset, I thought about the journey that had brought us here. The inheritance that had triggered everything. The uninvitation that had forced a reckoning. The choice to fight back instead of absorbing the hurt. It hadn't been easy. There had been moments when I questioned whether I was being too harsh, too unforgiving. Whether family reconciliation should matter more than pride or justice. But I'd learned something crucial in the process. Sometimes the kindest thing you can do for yourself is refuse to accept cruelty disguised as family. Sometimes strength looks like a quiet no and the willingness to enforce it. Sometimes the best revenge isn't dramatic or explosive, it's simply living well without the people who tried to diminish you. Patricia had wanted to make me feel like I didn't belong. Like I was less than. Like I owed her something I could never repay. Instead, she taught me that I didn't need her approval. Didn't need her acceptance. Didn't need anything from her at all. And that might be the most valuable lesson anyone's ever given me. December came around again. This time, there were no phone calls uninviting us from Christmas. No demands for access to property. No social media posts about family and loyalty and betrayal. Just silence. We spent Christmas morning the same way we had the year before, pajamas, cinnamon rolls, Sophia tearing through wrapping paper with abandon. But this year, there was no bitter edge to it. No wondering what photos Patricia was posting or what comments she was making or what new hurt was coming our way. This year, it was just ours. In the afternoon, Caroline came over with her husband, and we had dinner together, pot roast and mashed potatoes and chocolate cake. We laughed and talked and watched Sophia toddle around showing off her new toys. This is nice, Michael said later, after everyone had gone home and we were cleaning up the kitchen. This feels like what Christmas should be. It does. He paused, dish towel in hand. Do you think I'll ever hear from them again? I don't know. Maybe. Maybe not. And if I do? Then we'll deal with it. Together. He smiled and pulled me close. Together. I like the sound of that. That night, after everything was quiet and Sophia was asleep and the house was dark except for the lights on the tree, I stood in the living room and looked at the photos we'd taken that day. Us laughing. Sophia grinning. A family that looked nothing like Patricia's curated, coordinated perfection but felt infinitely more real. I thought about posting one on social media. Considered adding a caption about what family really means, about chosen people versus biological obligation. But then I decided against it. Because this wasn't about proving anything to Patricia. Wasn't about showing her what she was missing or making her feel bad about her choices. This was just about living. About building a life that made us happy without needing external validation or approval. And that, I realized, was the truest form of moving on. I put my phone away and went to bed. Tomorrow we'd wake up and start another day. And another after that. And slowly, without fanfare or drama, we'd keep building the life we wanted. Patricia would stay wherever she was, angry or regretful or self-righteous, and we'd be here, living. That was enough. More than enough. It was everything.
Story 3.
At his family reunion, my boyfriend told everyone I was practice for the real thing while I was standing right there getting potato salad. His mom laughed and asked when we'd get serious. He shrugged, when she loses 30 pounds and gets interesting, maybe then, everyone laughed. I didn't cry, I just nodded, kept eating, and even helped clean up. That night, I slept on the couch and left at 5 a.m. while he was still asleep. The next morning, his key didn't work because I changed the locks at 6 a.m. while eating a breakfast sandwich in my car, watching the locksmith drill out the old cylinder like he was performing surgery on my life. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me back up, because you need to understand what led to that moment. Not the family reunion, that was just the match. The gasoline had been pooling for months, maybe longer, and I'd been pretending it was just water. Harmless. Normal. The kind of thing you step over on your way to something better. His name was Derek. 29 years old, worked in pharmaceutical sales, drove a leased BMW he talked about like it was a personality trait. We'd been together for 2 years, living together for 8 months. The apartment was mine, my name on the lease, my furniture, my deposit collecting dust in some property management account. He moved in after his roommate got engaged and suddenly rent was too complicated to split 3 ways. I didn't think much of it at the time. You don't, do you? When someone you're sleeping with needs a place to crash, you say yes because saying no feels petty. Ungenerous. Like you're the one with the problem. I should have seen it coming at the reunion. All the signs were there, painted in primary colors across his family's faces. But I was busy being the good girlfriend. Bringing the 7-layer dip nobody asked for. Laughing at his uncle's jokes about participation trophies. Refilling the ice bucket. I wore the sundress Derek said made me look put together, which I later realized meant acceptable. The yellow one with the white flowers. I remember because I burned it the day after I changed the locks, watched it curl and blacken in my building's dumpster like a confession I didn't know anyone. The reunion was at his aunt's place in the suburbs, one of those sprawling houses with a backyard that bleeds into the next yard, where everyone has a trampoline and a golden retriever named something aggressively friendly like Buddy or Scout. There were maybe 40 people there. Derek's parents, his 2 brothers, their wives, cousins, second cousins, that one aunt everyone whispers about but nobody explains. I'd met most of them before, in small doses. Holiday dinners. Birthday brunches. Always in contexts where I was too temporary to matter but too present to ignore. I was standing by the buffet table. Not hovering, just standing there with a paper plate, scooping potato salad, when Derek walked over with his mom and his older brother, Jason. They were mid-conversation, the kind where everyone's already laughing before the punchline lands. I smiled. Nodded. Kept scooping. I thought I was part of it. Then Derek's mom, Linda, with the highlights and the Lululemon jacket she wore to everything, turned to me and said, "So when are you 2 getting serious?" I keep telling Derek he's not getting any younger. I opened my mouth. Not to answer, just to participate. To exist in the moment. Derek beat me to it. When she loses 30 pounds and gets interesting, he said. Casual. Like he was commenting on the weather. Maybe then. Jason laughed first. The kind of laugh that gives everyone else permission. Then Linda. Then the cousin I'd never met, the one with the frosted tips and the craft beer in his hand. Someone behind me snorted. I couldn't see who, but I felt it in my spine. That ripple of validation spreading through the crowd like they'd all been waiting for someone to say it out loud. I didn't cry. That's the part I'm still proud of, if proud is even the right word. My throat closed up, sure. My face went hot. I could feel my pulse in my teeth. But I didn't cry. I just nodded. Smiled. Scooped another glob of potato salad onto my plate like nothing had detonated. Noted, I said. My voice didn't shake. I made sure of it. Derek's mom patted my shoulder. Not comforting. Performative. The kind of touch that says, we're still friendly, right? Then she drifted off to talk about someone's new deck furniture. I stayed at that buffet table for another 20 minutes. Ate my potato salad. Had some coleslaw. A burger. Dessert. I helped clean up after. Carried trash bags to the dumpster. Stacked chairs. Thanked his aunt for hosting. I was so good at being good that I almost forgot I was supposed to be devastated. Derek didn't say anything on the drive home. Not an apology. Not an explanation. He scrolled through his phone, occasionally laughing at something I couldn't see. Once, he glanced at me and said, "You okay?" "Fine," I said. He shrugged. Put his phone down. Turned on a podcast about Bitcoin. When we got back to the apartment, my apartment, he went straight to the bedroom, peeled off his clothes, and collapsed into bed like the day had exhausted him. I stood in the hallway for a while, listening to him breathe. Then I grabbed a blanket from the closet, lay down on the couch, and stared at the ceiling until my eyes adjusted to the dark. I didn't sleep. Couldn't. My brain kept replaying the moment, scrubbing through it frame by frame, looking for the angle where I'd misheard or misunderstood. But there wasn't one. It was clean. Surgical. 30 pounds and get interesting. Maybe then. At 5 a.m., I got up, grabbed my keys, and left. I didn't take much. My wallet. My phone. A jacket. I drove to the 24-hour diner 6 blocks away and sat in a booth by the window, drinking coffee that tasted like pencil shavings and planning. Not revenge. Not yet. Just planning. By 6 a.m., I was parked outside my apartment building with a locksmith I'd found on my phone. He was older, maybe 60, with hands that looked like they'd opened 10,000 doors. I explained the situation in broad strokes: boyfriend staying with me but not on the lease, relationship over, need the locks changed before he wakes up. He didn't ask questions. Just nodded, pulled out his drill, and got to work. I ate my breakfast sandwich in the car, watching him replace the cylinder. Watching my life split into before and after. I'd picked it up at the diner before driving back, and it had gone cold in the bag, the egg rubbery, but I ate it anyway because I needed to finish something. When the locksmith was done, I paid him in cash, tipped him extra, and went inside. Derek was still asleep. I could hear him snoring through the bedroom door. I stood there for a second, holding the new keys, feeling them dig into my palm. Then I started packing his things. Not everything. Just enough. Clothes. Toiletries. His laptop. The pretentious French press he insisted on using. I worked fast, methodically, the way you do when you're trying not to feel. Everything went into the suitcases he'd brought when he moved in, the expensive ones with the wheels that squeaked. I zipped them up, rolled them into the hallway, and left them by the door. At 8:32 a.m., he woke up. I heard him stumble into the bathroom, heard the faucet run, heard him shuffle into the kitchen. He stopped when he saw me sitting at the table, his suitcases lined up like evidence. "What's this?" he said. "You're leaving," I said. He laughed. Not cruelly. Confused. "What are you talking about?" "You're leaving," I repeated. "Your stuff is packed. The locks are changed. You can pick up anything I missed later, but you're leaving now." His face did something complicated. Surprise. Annoyance. A flicker of panic he tried to hide. "Are you serious? Over a joke?" It wasn't a joke. It was a joke. Everyone was laughing. You laughed. I didn't laugh. You smiled. I smiled because I was trying not to scream, I said. My voice was still calm. Too calm. It scared me a little. You humiliated me in front of your entire family. Told them I wasn't good enough. Told them I was practice. Practice, Derek. Like I'm something you're trying on before you find the real version. He ran a hand through his hair, that move he did when he wanted to look thoughtful. You're overreacting. It was just guy talk. You know how families are. I know how your family is, I said. And I know you didn't defend me. Didn't apologize. Didn't even check if I was okay. You just let them laugh? Because it wasn't a big deal. It was to me. He stared at me for a long moment, and I watched something shift behind his eyes. Calculation. He was running scenarios, weighing his options. Finally, he sighed. Okay. Fine. I'm sorry. I shouldn't have said it. Can we move past this now? No. Why not? Because I don't want to. That's not fair. Neither is what you said. His jaw tightened. So what, you're just kicking me out? Just like that? Where am I supposed to go? Not my problem. This is my place too. No, it's not. Your name's not on the lease. You don't pay rent. You split utilities sometimes, when you remember, but this apartment is mine. Legally. Financially. Completely. He opened his mouth. Closed it. Opened it again. You're really doing this. I am. Over one comment. Over 2 years of comments, I said. This was just the loudest one. He grabbed his suitcases, yanked them toward the door, and stopped. Turned back. You know what? You're right. You are practice. Practice for someone who doesn't take everything so seriously? Someone fun. Someone who doesn't make a federal case out of a joke. I didn't respond. Just sat there, holding my coffee mug, watching him leave. The door slammed. The building shook. Then it was quiet. I sat at that table for another 20 minutes, listening to the hum of the refrigerator, feeling the apartment settle back into itself. My apartment. Mine again. Then I called my best friend, Maya. He's gone, I said when she picked up. Good, she said. Now burn his stuff. I'm not burning his stuff. Fine. Donate it. Trash it. Sell it. I don't care. Just don't let him come back. I won't. I'm serious. He's going to try. Guys like him always try. They apologize, they grovel, they show up with flowers and some story about how they've changed. Don't fall for it. I won't, I said again. And I meant it. But Maya was right. He tried. The texts started that afternoon. First, they were angry. Accusations. Threats about small claims court and tenant rights and how I'd regret this. Then they softened. Apologies. Promises. Long paragraphs about how he'd been stressed at work, how his family brought out the worst in him, how he loved me and couldn't imagine his life without me. He sent flowers to my office the next day. Tulips. My favorite. The card said, I'm sorry. Let's talk. I threw them away. Didn't even take them out of the plastic. By the end of the week, he'd moved on to showing up. He knocked on my door at 10 p.m. on a Tuesday. I didn't answer. He texted, I know you're in there. I can see the lights. I turned off the lights and went to bed. He came back on Thursday. Same time. Same knocking. I called the building manager and asked about filing a trespassing notice. After that, he stopped coming. But the texts didn't stop. They just changed. Got weirder. More manipulative. He'd send me screenshots of our old conversations, highlighting the nice things I'd said, like I owed him consistency. He'd mention mutual friends, drop hints about how worried they were about me, how I seemed different. He sent me a Venmo request for half the couch. Then half the dishes. Then half the deposit he claimed he'd paid but never had. I ignored all of it. Then, 3 weeks after I kicked him out, I got a message from someone I didn't know. A woman named Ashley. She introduced herself as Derek's coworker. Said she'd heard we'd broken up and wanted to reach out because she thought I should know something. I almost didn't respond. Almost deleted it. But something in the way she phrased it, careful, hesitant, like she was bracing for me to blow up, made me curious. What should I know? I typed back. Her response came fast. Too fast. Like she'd been waiting. He's been telling people at work that you were obsessed with him. That you wouldn't leave him alone. That he had to break up with you because you were getting unstable. He's been showing people texts you sent him, saying they're proof you're harassing him. I stared at my phone. Read the message 3 times. What texts? I asked. She sent screenshots. Messages I'd sent months ago. Normal things. Do you want pasta or stir-fry for dinner? Can you grab milk on your way home? I'm running late, start without me. He'd cropped them, stripped the context, and spun them into some narrative where I was clingy and desperate. I felt something crack open in my chest. Not sadness. Rage. "Thank you for telling me," I typed back. "I thought you should know," Ashley said. "For what it's worth, most of us don't believe him. But he's loud about it. And your name's attached now." I didn't respond. Just sat there, staring at the screenshots, feeling the weight of what he'd done settle over me like a second skin. He wasn't just gone. He was rewriting history. Turning himself into the victim. Turning me into the villain. And I realized something in that moment, something cold and clarifying. He thought he'd gotten away with it. Thought he could humiliate me, discard me, and then trash my reputation without consequence. Thought I'd just take it. Absorb it. Move on. He thought I was weak. I wasn't going to correct him gently. The first thing I did was document everything. Screenshots of his texts. The Venmo requests. The timestamps of when he'd shown up at my apartment. I saved the messages from Ashley. I pulled up old emails, old photos, anything that proved the timeline of our relationship and the power dynamics within it. I organized it all into a folder on my laptop labeled evidence, because that's what it was. Then I started digging. I'm not proud of this part, but I'm not ashamed of it either. Derek had left his laptop behind. I'd packed it with his other things, but when he picked up his stuff, begrudgingly, with his brother in tow, he'd only grabbed the suitcases and a few boxes. The laptop sat in my closet for 2 weeks before I even remembered it was there. I opened it. His password was the same as it had always been, the year he graduated college plus his initials. Not exactly Fort Knox. What I found didn't surprise me. It disappointed me, which is somehow worse. Emails to women I didn't know. Not just 1. 5. Maybe 6. Messages on dating apps he'd never deleted. Conversations that overlapped with our relationship by months, sometimes longer. Nothing overtly physical, but the intent was clear. He was always looking. Always keeping his options open. I was never the real thing. I was the placeholder. And then I found the group chat. It was him and his brothers and a couple of college friends, one of those threads that had been going for years. I scrolled back through months of messages. Most of it was boring. Sports. Memes. Complaints about work. But every so often, there'd be a message about me. Usually from Derek. "She's on my back about the dishes again. So annoying. Why are women so emotional about everything? I'm just writing this out until someone better comes along. She's fine for now." His brothers egged him on. Jason, the older one who'd laughed at the reunion, sent a message in April, "Dude, just dump her. You're clearly not into it." Derek's response, "I will. When I'm ready. It's not like she's going anywhere." I read that message 5 times. Felt it burrow into my brain and set up camp. When I'm ready. It's not like she's going anywhere. He'd been planning to leave me. On his timeline. When it was convenient. When he'd found someone else. I was supposed to sit there, loyal and oblivious, until he decided I'd outlived my usefulness. I closed the laptop. Sat there in the dark. Let the anger wash over me until it hardened into something sharper. Then I got to work. I didn't want to ruin his life. That sounds dramatic, and it's not what I was after. I just wanted him to feel a fraction of what he'd made me feel. Small. Stupid. Disposable. I wanted him to understand that actions have consequences, even when you think you're untouchable. So I made a plan. Step 1, I sent screenshots of the group chat to Jason's wife, Emily. I didn't editorialize. Didn't add commentary. Just forwarded the messages where Derek and Jason talked about their girlfriends and wives like they were inconveniences. Let her draw her own conclusions. She responded within an hour. "Thank you for sending this. I'm sorry you had to see it." I didn't hear what happened after that, but 2 days later, Jason's profile picture on social media changed from a photo of him and Emily to a photo of just him. Draw your own conclusions. Step 2, I contacted Ashley again. Told her I appreciated the heads up and asked if she'd be willing to share what Derek had been saying at work with HR. Not as a formal complaint. Just as a clarification. A correction to the record. She hesitated. "I don't want to cause drama." "Neither do I said. "But he's using your workplace to trash my name. If he's willing to lie about me, he's probably willing to lie about other things. You don't have to do anything. I just thought you should know the full picture." I sent her the screenshots. The texts. The evidence. Let her decide. A week later, Derek posted a vague status on social media about toxic work environments and people who can't mind their own business. I took that as a win. Step 3, the laptop. I didn't delete anything. Didn't alter anything. I just returned it. Dropped it off at his new place, a cramped apartment he was sharing with a college buddy, with a note that said, "You left this. Thought you might need it." I didn't mention what I'd seen. Didn't threaten him. Just gave him back his property. But here's the thing, Derek wasn't stupid. Paranoid, yes. Guilty, definitely. But not stupid. He'd know I'd looked. He'd wonder what I'd found. And he'd spend the next few weeks tearing himself apart trying to figure out what I knew and what I'd done with it. The uncertainty would eat him alive. And it did. I know because Maya heard it through a mutual friend. Derek had become obsessed with damage control. He'd locked down his social media. Changed his passwords. Started asking people if I'd contacted them. He was unraveling, spinning out, and the best part was that I hadn't done anything illegal. Hadn't even done anything cruel. I just held up a mirror. Step 4, I moved on. Not in the revenge sense. In the actual, literal sense. I started therapy. Not because I was broken, but because I wanted to make sure I didn't carry Derek's voice into my next relationship. I picked up hobbies I'd let slide. Started running again. Signed up for a pottery class. Reconnected with friends I'd neglected. I gained weight, actually. Not 30 pounds, but enough that I noticed. And I didn't care. I felt lighter anyway. I also started dating again. Casually. Nothing serious. Just reminding myself that I was more than Derek's practice run. One night, about 2 months after I'd kicked him out, I ran into him at a coffee shop. Pure chance. I was there with a friend from work, laughing about something I can't even remember now, and I saw him in line. He looked thinner. Tired. He saw me too. Our eyes met for half a second, and I watched him decide whether to say something. He didn't. He grabbed his coffee and left. I didn't watch him go. Didn't care. Just went back to my conversation, my life, the future I was building without him. But here's the thing I didn't expect, the guilt. Not over kicking him out. Not over the locks or the screenshots or any of it. I'd do all of that again. But there was this small, nagging part of me that wondered if I'd been too harsh. If I'd taken it too far. If I'd become the villain he'd already made me out to be. I talked to Maya about it one night over takeout. "You think I went too far?" I asked. She looked at me like I'd sprouted a second head. "Are you serious?" "I don't know. Sometimes I wonder if I should have just let it go. Moved on quietly." "He humiliated you in front of his entire family," Maya said. "He gaslit you for weeks. He lied about you at work. He was planning to string you along until he found someone better. You didn't go too far. You didn't even go far enough." What would far enough look like? I don't know. Keying his car? Posting the screenshots publicly? Actually ruining his life instead of just mildly inconveniencing it? I laughed. I'm not doing any of that. I know. That's my point. You're too nice. You gave him exactly what he deserved, which was the truth. If he can't handle that, that's on him. She was right. Logically, I knew she was right. But emotions aren't logical, and some part of me still felt like I'd broken a rule I didn't know existed. Like revenge, even justified revenge, left a stain. Or maybe I was just tired. 3 months after the reunion, Derek's mom called me. I didn't recognize the number at first, almost didn't answer. But curiosity got the better of me. "Hello?" "Hi, sweetie. It's Linda." I froze. "Hi, Linda. I hope I'm not bothering you. I know things ended badly between you and Derek, and I just wanted to reach out. See how you're doing." "I'm fine," I said carefully. "How are you?" "Oh, busy. The holidays are coming up, and I'm already stressed," she laughed, that high, performative laugh I remembered from the reunion. "Listen, I wanted to apologize. For what happened at the reunion. Derek told me you were upset about it, and I just feel terrible." "Okay," I said. "I didn't mean anything by it, It was just family teasing. We weren't trying to hurt your feelings." "You didn't tease me," I said. "Derek did. You just laughed." There was a pause. "Well, yes. I suppose that's true. But you have to understand, Derek's always been like that. He jokes around. He doesn't mean half of what he says. He meant it, I said. I don't think he meant it, Linda. And even if he didn't, you laughed. His brother laughed. Your whole family laughed. At me. While I was standing there. So if you're calling to apologize, I appreciate it, but I don't think you actually understand what you're apologizing for. Another pause. Longer this time. I see. Is there anything else? I asked. No, she said quietly. No, I suppose there isn't. Take care of yourself, sweetie. She hung up. I sat there for a long time afterward, staring at my phone, trying to figure out how I felt. Not vindicated. Not satisfied. Just tired. Tired of carrying this weight, tired of replaying the reunion in my head, tired of wondering if I'd done the right thing. But I had. I knew I had. Because here's what I learned from all of this: people like Derek don't change. They just get better at hiding. And people like Linda don't apologize because they're sorry. They apologize because they want you to absolve them. To tell them it's okay, it wasn't that bad, we can all move on now. I wasn't going to do that. Not for Derek. Not for Linda. Not for anyone who thought I owed them forgiveness just because they'd finally noticed I was human. It's been about 6 months now since the reunion. Since the locks. Since I packed his suitcases and reclaimed my life. I don't think about Derek much anymore. When I do, it's not with anger or regret. Just a kind of distant curiosity, like he's a character in a story I read once and barely remember. I heard through Maya's network that he's dating someone new. A woman from his gym. Blonde. Thin. Interesting, according to his Instagram. I only looked once, briefly, then closed the app. I hope she's everything he thinks he deserves. I hope she's smart enough to see through him before he has a chance to make her feel small. But that's not my responsibility. Not my problem. Not my life. Except it became my problem again, briefly, when she reached out to me. Her name was Tessa. She found me on social media about 7 months after the reunion. The message came through on a Thursday evening while I was meal prepping for the week, something I'd started doing as part of my whole taking care of myself initiative. Hi. I know this is weird, and you don't know me, but I'm dating your ex. Derek. He talks about you sometimes. I was wondering if we could talk. I stared at the message for a full minute, a knife in one hand and a half-chopped bell pepper in the other. My first instinct was to ignore it. Delete it. Block her. This wasn't my circus anymore. But something made me respond. What do you want to talk about? Her reply came immediately. Can we meet? Coffee? I'll buy. I just have some questions, and I don't know who else to ask. I should have said no. Should have told her to figure it out herself, the way I'd had to. But there was something in the way she phrased it, questions, not accusations, that made me curious. Saturday. 2 p.m. The cafe on 5th and Main. Thank you. Really. Thank you. I told Maya about it that night. She was predictably horrified. You're meeting with her? His new girlfriend? Apparently. Why? What could she possibly need from you? I don't know. But I'm curious. This is a terrible idea. What if Derek finds out? What if he shows up? Then I'll leave, I said. I'm not afraid of him anymore. And I wasn't. That was the surprising part. The idea of seeing Derek again didn't fill me with dread or anxiety. It just felt like something that might happen. Like running into an old coworker at the grocery store. Mildly inconvenient. Ultimately meaningless. Saturday came. I got to the cafe 15 minutes early, ordered a latte, and claimed a table by the window. I people-watched. Scrolled through my phone. Tried not to overthink it. Tessa arrived exactly on time. I recognized her immediately from the brief glimpse I'd allowed myself of Derek's Instagram. She was pretty in that effortless way some people are, tall, athletic, with blonde hair pulled back in a ponytail and minimal makeup. She wore leggings and an oversized sweatshirt, the uniform of someone who'd just come from or was heading to the gym. She spotted me, waved awkwardly, and made her way over. You're her, she said, sliding into the seat across from me. I'm her. Thanks for meeting me. I wasn't sure you would. I wasn't sure I would either, I admitted. So what's this about? She ordered a coffee from the waitress who materialized beside us, then folded her hands on the table and looked at me directly. Derek told me you were obsessed with him. That you couldn't let go after he broke up with you. That you kept showing up at his place, sending him messages, trying to get him back. I nodded slowly. He told me he'd been saying that. Is it true? No. I didn't think so, she said quietly. We sat there for a moment, the noise of the cafe filling the silence between us. The hiss of the espresso machine. The murmur of conversations. The clink of ceramic on ceramic. Why didn't you think so? I asked finally. Because I found the group chat. My stomach tightened. Which group chat? The one with his brothers. The one where he talked about you. About me. About every woman he's ever dated, like we're just placeholders until something better comes along. I felt a strange surge of vindication mixed with sympathy. How'd you find it? He left his phone on the counter while he was in the shower. I wasn't snooping. It was just there, face up, and a message came through. I saw your name. Got curious. She wrapped her hands around her coffee mug. I scrolled back. Found all of it. The stuff about you. The stuff about me. The way he talks when he thinks nobody's listening. And you're still with him? For now, she said. I'm trying to figure out my exit strategy. He lives in my apartment. I let him move in 3 months ago, and now I'm realizing that was a mistake. I almost laughed. The parallel was too perfect. Let me guess. He said his lease was ending and it made sense financially. How did you know? Because that's what he told me too. Tessa's face did something complicated. Not quite a smile. Not quite a grimace. I feel like an idiot. Don't, I said. He's good at this. Really good. He makes you feel like you're the problem for questioning him. Like you're being unreasonable or paranoid. Exactly. She looked down at her coffee. Can I ask you something? Sure. When you kicked him out, how did you do it? I mean, logistically. Did you give him notice? Did he fight you on it? I've been reading about tenant rights and eviction laws, and it's also complicated. He wasn't on the lease, I said. So legally, he had no claim to the apartment. I changed the locks while he was asleep, packed his stuff, and told him to leave. He threatened to take me to small claims court, but he never followed through. I think he knew he didn't have a case. What if he had been on the lease? Then it would have been harder, I admit it. But still doable. If he's not paying rent, if his name's not on any bills, you have options. You might need to give him 30 days notice, depending on your state, but you can make it happen. The key is documentation. Prove he's not a tenant, just a guest who overstayed. She pulled out her phone and started taking notes. This is helpful. Really helpful. You're going to kick him out? I'm going to try. She looked up at me. Were you scared? When you did it? I thought about that morning. The locksmith. The breakfast sandwich. The suitcases lined up by the door. Terrified. But also relieved. Like I was finally doing something instead of just absorbing everything he threw at me. That's how I feel now, she said. Terrified but ready. We talked for another hour. I told her about the texts, the showing up at my door, the way he tried to rewrite history at his job. I told her about Ashley and the screenshots and how I'd returned his laptop. She told me about the red flags she'd ignored. The comments about her appearance. The way he'd compare her to other women. The casual cruelty disguised as honesty. He told me you were boring, Tessa said at one point. That's the word he used. Boring. He said you never wanted to go out, never wanted to try new things. That he felt trapped. I went out all the time, I said. I just didn't want to go out with him every single night. Sometimes I wanted to stay home and relax. That's not boring. That's normal. I know. I just wanted you to know what he said. In case you ever doubted yourself. I don't, I said. And I meant it. When we finally stood to leave, Tessa hugged me. It caught me off guard. I'm not a hugger, especially not with strangers, but something about the moment felt significant. Like we were two people who'd survived the same storm and lived to compare notes. Thank you, she said. For meeting me. For being honest. Good luck, I said. And if you need help, reach out. I mean it. She nodded, smiled, and walked away. I watched her go, feeling something I didn't expect, hope. Not for Derek. Not even for Tessa specifically. Just hope that people could learn. That patterns could break. That nobody had to stay stuck. I texted Maya on my way home. She's going to kick him out. Maya's response was immediate. Good. Did you tell her about the locks? I did. I love you. You're a good person. I didn't feel particularly good. Just honest. which, I was learning, was sometimes the same thing. 2 weeks later, I got another message from Tessa. Short. To the point. I did it. He's gone. Thank you. I smiled. Typed back a quick congratulations and left it at that. But here's the thing nobody tells you about revenge, or payback, or whatever you want to call it. It doesn't actually fix anything. It doesn't erase what happened. Doesn't make you feel whole again. It just closes a chapter. And sometimes that's enough. The real healing came later. In the quiet moments. In therapy sessions where I unpacked not just Derek, but the version of myself who'd tolerated him for so long. In conversations with friends who reminded me I was more than the relationship I'd escaped. In small victories, like saying no without explaining myself, or setting boundaries without apologizing. I started running again. Not for weight loss. Not for punishment. Just because I liked the feeling of my body doing something hard and surviving it. I ran early in the mornings, when the city was still half asleep and the air tasted clean. Sometimes I thought about Derek. Sometimes I didn't. Both were fine. I also started writing. Nothing fancy. Just journals at first. Pages and pages of unfiltered thoughts that nobody would ever read. But it helped. Gave me a place to put the anger and the shame and the lingering what-ifs. Eventually, I started writing other things. Short essays. Personal stories. The kind of stuff you might post online under a pseudonym when you're feeling brave. I wrote about the reunion. About the potato salad. About the locks. I posted it anonymously on a forum where people share their stories. I didn't expect much. Maybe a few upvotes. Maybe a comment or two. Instead, it went viral. Thousands of people read it. Commented. Shared it. Told their own stories in the replies. Stories about partners who'd humiliated them. Families who'd laughed at them. Moments where they decided enough was enough and reclaimed their lives. Reading those comments was overwhelming. Some people called me a hero. Some called me petty. Most just said, I get it. And that was the weirdest part. Being understood by strangers. Realizing I wasn't alone in this specific kind of hurt. Maya called me after she saw the post. This is you, isn't it? Maybe. It's you. I recognize the potato salad. I laughed. Don't tell anyone. I won't. But for what it's worth, I'm proud of you. For writing it. For sharing it. For not pretending it didn't hurt. It did hurt, I said. It still does sometimes. That's okay. Hurt doesn't make you weak. It just makes you human. She was right. And I was starting to believe it. 8 months after the reunion, I ran into Derek one last time. Not at a coffee shop. Not through some engineered confrontation. Just random chance at a bookstore downtown. I was browsing the fiction section, looking for something new to read, when I heard his voice behind me. That specific cadence I used to know better than my own. Hey. I turned. He was standing there, hands in his pockets, looking uncomfortable. Thinner than I remembered. Older somehow. Hey, I said. How've you been? Good. You? Good. Yeah. Good. We stood there for a moment, two people who used to share a bed and a life, now struggling to fill 30 seconds of small talk. I heard about the post, he said finally. The one online. About the reunion. My stomach dropped. Okay. It was you, right? I recognized the details. I didn't deny it. Yeah. It was me. Why'd you write it? Because I wanted to, I said. Because it happened. Because pretending it didn't wasn't working anymore. He nodded slowly. You made me sound pretty bad. I wrote what happened. That's not how I remember it. I know, I said. That's kind of the problem. He shifted his weight, glanced away, looked back. For what it's worth, I'm sorry. For what I said. For how I treated you. I was in a bad place, and I took it out on you. You weren't in a bad place, I said quietly. You were just cruel. His jaw tightened. I didn't mean to be. Doesn't matter. You were. We stood there in the silence that followed, surrounded by books neither of us was going to buy. Finally, he sighed. I hope you're happy, he said. Seriously. I hope you're doing well. I am, I said. And I was. He walked away after that. Disappeared into the stacks. I watched him go, felt nothing, and went back to browsing. Later, in the parking lot, I sat in my car and thought about that moment. About how I'd expected to feel something: anger, vindication, sadness. But there was nothing. Just a quiet sense of closure. The kind you get when you finish a book you didn't particularly like but needed to see through to the end. I drove home, unlocked my door with a keychain Maya gave me, and stepped into my apartment. My space. My life. Mine. And I realized something important: Derek didn't matter anymore. Not as a presence. Not as a memory. Not even as a cautionary tale. He was just a person I used to know who taught me, inadvertently, how much I was willing to tolerate before I decided I deserved better. That was his legacy. Not the hurt. Not the humiliation. Just the lesson. And I was grateful for it, in a strange way. Grateful for the reunion. For the potato salad. For the moment that broke me open and forced me to rebuild. Because the person I rebuilt was stronger. Clearer. Less apologetic. More certain. She knew what she wanted. What she wouldn't accept. What she was worth. And she wasn't afraid anymore. Not of being alone. Not of being judged. Not of taking up space. That person was me. Finally, completely, unapologetically me.
Story 4.
My husband ignored me crying in the corner at his promotion party while he laughed with his coworkers, and his female work wife kept touching his arm. I'd just gotten a call that my father was in the hospital. I tried getting his attention 3 times, he waved me off each time. Then his boss asked, "Are you all right?" Before I could answer, my husband rushed over and said, "She's fine, just emotional." You know how women get. I didn't correct him. I just smiled, grabbed my coat, and left. The next morning, he woke up to 2 emails and 1 picture that destroyed his entire world. I need to tell someone this before I lose my mind. The thing about betrayal is that it doesn't announce itself. It doesn't walk through the front door wearing a sign. It sits next to you at dinner. It kisses you goodnight. It tells you you're being paranoid when your gut screams otherwise. My husband's name is Daniel. Was Daniel. Is Daniel. I don't know what tense to use anymore for someone who still exists but feels like a ghost. We've been married for 6 years, together for 9. College sweethearts, if you can believe that cliché. Everyone said we were lucky. Everyone said we were goals. The night everything shattered started ordinary enough. Daniel had been working late for months on some massive project at his tech firm. I'm talking 12, 14-hour days. Weekends disappeared. Our anniversary dinner got rescheduled 3 times before I stopped trying. He kept saying it would be worth it, that this promotion would change everything for us. We could finally start thinking about kids, maybe buy that house we'd been eyeing. I believed him because I wanted to. Because 9 years of history told me to. His promotion party was at this upscale restaurant downtown, the kind with cloth napkins and wine lists thicker than textbooks. I wore the black dress he used to love, the one that made him pull me close and whisper things that made me blush. He barely looked at me when I came downstairs. Just checked his watch and said we needed to leave. The restaurant was packed with his coworkers. I recognized maybe half of them from previous events. The other half were new hires, part of the expansion Daniel had been managing. They all seemed to know each other intimately, sharing inside jokes and finishing each other's sentences. I stood there with a glass of white wine I wasn't drinking, smiling at strangers who looked through me like I was furniture. That's when I noticed her. Melissa. Daniel's work wife. He'd mentioned her before, always casually, always in passing. She was on his project team, his right hand, the person who understood the technical stuff better than anyone. Smart as heck, he said. Invaluable, he said. I'd met her once at a company picnic, briefly, just long enough to register blonde hair and a handshake that lasted a second too long. Tonight she was wearing red. Crimson, actually, the kind that demands attention. And she had Daniel's attention completely. They stood in the center of the room, surrounded by a small crowd, and she kept touching his arm while she talked. Just light touches, fingers grazing his sleeve, hand resting on his forearm when she laughed. Each touch lasted a beat longer than professional. Daniel was laughing. Really laughing, the way he used to laugh with me before work consumed him. His whole face lit up. He leaned in when she spoke, tilted his head like every word she said was fascinating. I tried to join their circle. Twice I moved closer, positioned myself next to Daniel, waited for a pause in conversation. He shifted his body slightly each time, just enough to keep me outside the group. Not aggressive. Not obvious. Just enough. My phone buzzed at 8:47. My mother's name flashed on the screen. I stepped into the hallway to answer. She was crying so hard I could barely understand her. My father had collapsed at home. Chest pain, trouble breathing. The ambulance was taking him to Memorial Hospital. She was following behind, alone, terrified. My father was 63 and stubborn as concrete. He'd been complaining about indigestion for weeks, brushing off my mother's concerns, refusing to see a doctor. Now he was in an ambulance and my mother was falling apart and I was standing in a restaurant hallway while my husband celebrated. I went back inside. Found Daniel still with Melissa, still laughing. I touched his shoulder. "Hey, I need to talk to you for a second." He glanced at me, annoyed. Kind of in the middle of something. "It's important." "Can it wait?" "We're about to do the toast." Melissa smiled at me. It wasn't warm. "You must be so proud of him." "I am." "Daniel, please, just 1 minute. Babe, seriously, not now." He turned back to Melissa. "You were saying about the Singapore contract?" I stood there for maybe 10 seconds. Then I walked away. I tried again 15 minutes later. Daniel was at the bar, ordering another round for his team. I approached from the side, keeping my voice low. "Daniel, my dad's in the hospital. I need to leave." He didn't look at me. He was watching Melissa across the room, making sure she saw him ordering her favorite cocktail. "What happened?" "Possible heart attack. My mom is alone. Is he stable?" "I don't know, they just took him. So call your mom when you know more." "I can't leave right now, this is my night." My throat closed up. "I'm not asking you to leave. I just wanted to tell you I'm going." "You can't go, you just got here. People will think something's wrong." "Something is wrong. My father is probably fine. You know how your mom gets dramatic. Just stay another hour, then we'll both leave." He took the drinks and walked away. I went to the bathroom and cried for 5 minutes. Silent crying, the kind where you press your palms against your eyes and try to keep your breathing steady so no one hears. My makeup ran. I fixed it with shaking hands, told myself I was being weak, told myself Daniel was just stressed and excited and I was interrupting his moment. I went back out. Third attempt was the one that broke me. Daniel's boss, Richard, a silver-haired man who always remembered my name, found me standing alone near the window. "Are you all right?" Before I could answer, Daniel appeared. Materialized out of nowhere, suddenly attentive, suddenly concerned. He slid his arm around my waist, pulled me close. "She's fine, just emotional. You know how women get." He said it laughing. Light. Dismissive. Like I was a child throwing a tantrum. Richard looked uncomfortable. I just thought, she's been stressed about planning my party, making sure everything's perfect. Gets overwhelmed sometimes. Daniel squeezed my waist, a warning. "Right, honey?" I could have corrected him. Could have said my father was in the hospital and my husband didn't care. Could have made a scene, embarrassed him in front of his boss and coworkers and his work wife who was watching us from across the room with a small smile. I didn't. I smiled at Richard. "Just tired. It's been a long week." "Understandable. Well, we appreciate you sharing Daniel with us. He's going to do great things." Daniel relaxed. Kissed my temple, a performance of affection. "See? All good." Then he left. Went right back to Melissa, right back to laughing and touching and forgetting I existed. I grabbed my coat. Nobody noticed me leave. The drive to the hospital took 23 minutes. I made it in 17. My mother was in the waiting room, shredded tissue in her hands, mascara streaked down her face. She collapsed into my arms. My father was stable. Severe angina, not a heart attack, but scary enough to require overnight monitoring and a stern lecture from the cardiologist about lifestyle changes and ignoring symptoms. He was awake, groggy, embarrassed by the fuss. I stayed until 3 in the morning. Sat with my mother while my father slept, held her hand, promised everything would be okay. My phone stayed silent the entire time. No calls. No texts. Nothing from Daniel. I drove home as the sun started rising. Exhausted. Empty. Numb. Daniel was asleep in our bed, still in his dress shirt and slacks, one shoe on. He smelled like expensive whiskey and Melissa's perfume. I know her perfume because she'd hugged him goodbye at the company picnic, and the scent had lingered on his collar all evening. Jasmine and something darker. The same scent was on him now. I stood in the doorway for a long time. Watching him sleep. Watching him breathe. Wondering when exactly I'd become invisible to him. Then I went to his home office. Daniel keeps everything organized. Color-coded files, labeled folders, passwords written in a small notebook in his desk drawer because he's paranoid about digital security but trusts paper. I'd always thought it was endearing. Now I thought it was convenient. I logged into his laptop. Opened his email. Started reading. The first email from Melissa was professional. Project updates, meeting schedules, technical jargon I didn't understand. The second was friendly. Inside jokes, casual observations, emoji that felt too comfortable. The third mentioned dinner. Just the two of them, discussing strategy, nothing inappropriate. The fifth mentioned how much she enjoyed their dinner. How easy he was to talk to. How refreshing it was to work with someone who understood her. The 10th called him amazing. The 15th said she couldn't stop thinking about him. The 20th made me physically ill. They'd been sleeping together for 4 months. Since February. Since before my birthday, before our anniversary, before all those late nights and canceled plans and times he came home smelling like someone else. The emails were detailed. Explicit in places, tender in others. They had pet names for each other. They sent photos. They made plans. They talked about me sometimes, about how Daniel felt trapped, how he'd married too young, how he loved me but wasn't in love with me anymore, how he was planning to ask for a divorce after his promotion because he couldn't risk any drama affecting his career trajectory. Melissa called me the wife. Not my name. Just the wife. Daniel called me complicated. They were planning a trip to Singapore together in 3 weeks. A business trip, officially. 5 days in a luxury hotel, separate rooms booked for appearance sake but they'd only use one. They'd already picked out restaurants, planned excursions, joked about how freeing it would be to not hide. I read until my eyes burned, until every email was memorized, every casual cruelty etched into my brain. Then I copied everything. Every email, every photo, every document. Saved it all to a flash drive, uploaded it to a private cloud account Daniel didn't know existed. Then I started planning. People think revenge is about anger. It's not. Anger is just the spark. Real revenge is about precision. Patience. Understanding exactly what someone values most and taking it away piece by piece so they feel it happening but can't stop it. Daniel valued his career. His reputation. His image as the golden boy who could do no wrong. He valued Melissa, whatever they had, whatever future they'd imagined together. He valued control. I was going to take all of it. But not immediately. Not in a rage. That's what he'd expect, what he prepared for. Drama he could manage, tears he could dismiss. No, I needed him to feel safe first. Comfortable. Unsuspecting. I went back to bed. Curled up on my side. Closed my eyes. Daniel woke up at 9, hungover and disoriented. He found me in the kitchen, making coffee. Hey. His voice was rough. What time did you leave last night? Around 9. My dad was in the hospital. Oh. Right. Is he okay? Stable now? Good. That's good. He poured himself coffee, didn't ask for details. Last night was incredible. Richard pulled me aside, said I'm being considered for the Singapore project. It's huge, babe. Career defining. That's wonderful. Melissa really went to bat for me. She told Richard the first was the only person who could handle it. She seems very supportive. She's the best. You'd like her if you got to know her. I smiled. Maybe. He kissed my forehead, distracted already, thinking about work. I need to shower. Got a meeting at 11. I waited until I heard the water running. Then I sent the first email. Richard's work email was on the company website. So was HR's. So was the CEO's. I crafted the message carefully, professionally, using a burner email account I'd set up at 4 in the morning. The subject line read, Ethical concern regarding Melissa Chen and Daniel Morrison. The body was brief. Clinical. Just enough information to raise questions without seeming vindictive. I mentioned observing inappropriate behavior at the promotion party. Suggested they might want to review company communications between the two employees, particularly regarding the upcoming Singapore trip and expense reports from their previous business dinners. I didn't attach evidence yet. Just planted the seed. Let them do the digging. I sent it at 9:42 from a coffee shop 3 miles away, using their public Wi-Fi. The second email went to Melissa's fiancé. I found him through her social media. Trevor. Investment banker, square jaw, Posts about CrossFit and crypto. They'd been engaged for 8 months, wedding planned for next spring. Big venue, expensive photographer. Melissa posted about it constantly. The dress, the flowers, the perfect life they were building. I sent him a message from a blank Facebook account. No identifying information, no profile picture. Just a simple note: you don't know me, but I thought you deserved to know your fiancée isn't who you think she is. Check your email correspondence with Daniel Morrison from work. I'm sorry to be the one to tell you. Short. Anonymous. Devastating. I sent it at 9:55. The third thing I did was take a photo. Daniel's home office has a window overlooking our backyard. The morning sun comes through at just the right angle. I'd taken thousands of photos in that room, backgrounds for video calls, casual snapshots, memories of better times. This photo was different. I positioned my phone carefully. Made sure the angle captured Daniel's desk, his laptop still open from my early morning research, papers spread across the surface. Then I stepped into frame. Held up the flash drive containing every email, every photo, every piece of evidence of his affair. I wasn't smiling. Wasn't crying. Just standing there, looking directly at the camera, holding proof of everything he'd done. I sent it to Daniel's phone at 10:03, with a message: check your email. Both of them. We need to talk when you get home. Then I waited. Let it sit. Let him see it, process it, panic. I packed a bag while he was still in the shower. Clothes, toiletries, my laptop, important documents. I'd been preparing this for hours, mentally cataloging what I needed, what I could leave behind. Everything fit in one suitcase. I could hear him getting ready upstairs. Phone ringing, probably wondering why I wasn't answering. Soon he'd see the message. See the photo. Realize what was happening. I wrote a note. Left it on the kitchen counter. Your boss knows. HR knows. The CEO knows. Trevor knows. I know. Everyone knows. You said I was emotional. Complicated. Just the wife. You're right about one thing: I am emotional. I'm furious. But I'm not complicated at all. I'm done. Don't contact me. My lawyer will be in touch. I left my wedding ring next to the note. I heard him coming down the stairs as I closed the front door behind me. My best friend Sarah lived 20 minutes away. She'd been telling me for months that something felt off about Daniel, that I seemed sad, that I wasn't myself anymore. I defended him every time. Now I called her from the car, voice shaking, and asked if I could stay with her for a while. She said yes before I finished the sentence. I stayed in her guest room and watched everything unfold from a distance. Daniel called 47 times that first day. Left voicemails ranging from angry to desperate to manipulative. After the 10th call, I blocked his number, blocked him on social media, blocked his email. I didn't listen to any messages after that. Just deleted the ones I'd received, systematically, one after another. He showed up at Sarah's apartment that night. She answered the door, blocked him from entering, told him I wasn't ready to talk. He tried pushing past her. She threatened to call the police. He left. The next morning, I received an email from my lawyer. I contacted her at 4:30 in the morning, right after copying all the evidence, right after deciding this marriage was over. She'd reviewed everything I sent, taken detailed notes, scheduled an emergency consultation. We met that afternoon. She was sharp, mid-50s, had handled messy divorces for 20 years. She looked at the evidence without flinching. This is solid, she said. More than enough for adultery, emotional distress. He'll try to fight it. They always do. But he won't win. I want it quick. I don't want to drag this out. Understood. I'll file paperwork this week. With this evidence, we can push for a fast resolution. Most judges don't look kindly on workplace affairs, especially when company resources were used. What about his job? She looked at me carefully. That's separate from the divorce. But if you're asking my professional opinion, companies take ethical violations seriously, particularly at his level. If HR investigates and finds he misused company time, resources, or created a hostile work environment, there could be consequences. What kind of consequences? Termination. Loss of promotion. Depending on the severity and their policies, possibly legal action if company money was misappropriated. I thought about all those business dinners. All those late nights. All those expenses charged to company cards while they built their relationship on company time. How long before they'd make a decision? Corporate investigations move slowly. 2 weeks, maybe 3. But if there's clear evidence of policy violations and the CEO wants to protect the company's reputation, it could be faster. I thanked her. Signed the retainer agreement. Set everything in motion. That night, I logged into a shared investment account Daniel didn't check regularly. It was money we'd saved together, technically joint assets, but I contributed more over the years from freelance work while Daniel focused on his career. I transferred half to a new account in my name. Exactly half, nothing that could be contested later. Just protecting what was mine. Day 3, Daniel's emails started. Formal ones, going through lawyers, trying to establish contact. I ignored them. My lawyer handled everything. Day 5, I heard through mutual friends that Richard had put Daniel on temporary administrative leave pending investigation. No official announcement, just suddenly absent from the office. Melissa too. Day 7, Trevor called off the wedding. Publicly. Changed his Facebook status, cancelled the venue, made a statement about betrayal and dishonesty. Melissa's social media went dark immediately after. Day 9, Daniel showed up at my parents' house. My father answered the door, still weak from his hospital stay but angry enough to stand straight. I wasn't there, but my mother told me about it later. Daniel cried, apparently. Begged my father to convince me to talk to him, said he'd made a terrible mistake, promised he'd end things with Melissa, swore he loved me. My father told him to leave before he called the police. Day 12, the company investigation concluded. Daniel and Melissa were both terminated for violating ethics policies, misusing company resources, and creating a hostile work environment by conducting an affair that affected team dynamics and decision-making. The Singapore project went to someone else. Daniel's promotion was revoked. His severance package was minimal because the termination was for cause. I found out through LinkedIn. His profile changed from employed to seeking opportunities. People from his company started removing him from their networks. Professional suicide, committed in real time. Day 15, Melissa's fiancé filed a lawsuit against her for emotional distress and money he'd spent on wedding planning. It wouldn't go anywhere, probably, but it was public and humiliating. Her reputation in their social circles was demolished. People took sides, posted about it, shared opinions. She became a cautionary tale. Day 18, Daniel's lawyer contacted mine with a settlement offer. He'd agree to everything I wanted: quick divorce, fair asset split, no contest, if I would sign a non-disclosure agreement about the affair and the circumstances of his termination. I said no. My lawyer was surprised. This is a very favorable offer. You'd get what you want quickly, minimal court appearances, no dragged-out litigation. He wants me silent because he's trying to salvage his career. He needs to be able to spin this as a mutual separation, irreconcilable differences, anything but the truth. That's accurate. I'm not giving him that. No NDA. He can explain to future employers why he was fired all on his own. She made a note. This will likely extend the proceedings. I don't care. He doesn't get to control the narrative anymore. Day 23, I agreed to meet Daniel face to face. Not because I wanted to, but because my lawyer suggested it might speed things along if he could say his piece, realize I wasn't changing my mind, and accept reality. We met at a neutral location, a conference room at my lawyer's office. Both our attorneys present, recording everything. Daniel looked terrible. Unshaven, weight loss, circles under his eyes that makeup couldn't hide. He'd aged years in 3 weeks. He tried apologizing. Said he'd been stupid, selfish, caught up in work stress and excitement and lost sight of what mattered. Said Melissa had pursued him, made him feel important and valued when I was always criticizing him, always needing something from him. I sat there listening without expression. Then he tried blaming me. Said I'd become distant, cold, didn't support his career, didn't understand the pressure he was under. Said if I'd been more present, more interested, more engaged, he never would have looked elsewhere. I let him finish. Waited until silence filled the room. You humiliated me at your promotion party while my father was in the hospital. You dismissed my pain as emotional. You called me complicated to your mistress. You planned to divorce me after Singapore because you didn't want drama affecting your career. You want to talk about cold and distant? You want to talk about unsupportive? You spent 4 months sleeping with someone else and blamed me for it to justify your choices. You don't get to rewrite history now that there are consequences. His lawyer shifted uncomfortably. Daniel's face crumpled. I still love you? We can fix this. Counseling, whatever you need. I don't love you anymore. I don't even like you. Sign the papers. Please, sign the papers, or drag this out and lose even more. Those are your options. He signed that day. Right there, hands shaking, tears on his cheeks. Agreed to everything. Fair asset division, no spousal support requested from either side, clean break. We were officially divorced 6 weeks after the promotion party. I stayed with Sarah for 2 months while I figured out next steps. Started therapy to process everything, started rebuilding my sense of self outside of being someone's wife. Started sleeping through the night again without nightmares about jasmine perfume and dismissive laughter. My father recovered fully. Changed his diet, started exercising, took his health seriously for the first time in decades. My mother said his brush with mortality made him realize what mattered. He apologized for not being there when Daniel showed up at the house, said he wished he'd said worse things. I told him I was proud of him for just standing up at all. 3 months after everything imploded, I ran into Melissa at a grocery store. Pure accident, no planning, just bad luck. She was in the produce section, examining tomatoes, looking smaller than I remembered. No red dress. No confident smile. Just tired. She saw me. Froze. Looked like she might run. I walked over. I'm not going to make a scene, I said quietly. But I want you to know something. You didn't take him from me. He gave himself away. And you didn't win a prize. You won a liar who discarded 6 years of marriage the moment someone new paid attention to him. If he did it to me, he'll do it to you. If he already hasn't. Her eyes filled with tears. We're not together anymore. Haven't been since the investigation. He blamed me for everything, said I ruined his career. Good. You both ruined your own careers. You both made choices knowing they were wrong. You don't get to play victim now. I'm sorry. I know it doesn't mean anything, but I am. I convinced myself you didn't matter, that your marriage was already over, that I wasn't doing anything wrong. I was lying to myself. Yes. You were. Does it get better? The guilt? I looked at her. Really looked. Saw someone who destroyed her engagement, her reputation, her career, all for a man who abandoned her the second things got hard. I don't know. I'm not the person to ask about your guilt. I only know about my healing. And that's happening without either of you in my life. I left her standing there. Didn't look back. 6 months post-divorce, I moved into my own apartment. Small, affordable, mine. Decorated it exactly how I wanted without considering anyone else's opinion. Hung art I liked, painted walls bold colors, bought furniture that made me happy. Started dating casually. Nothing serious, just reminding myself I was interesting and worthy of attention and capable of connection. Remembered what it felt like to laugh with someone who actually listened when I spoke. Daniel moved to a different city. Took a lower position at a smaller firm, significant pay cut, rebuilding from nothing. I heard about it through the network of mutual friends who'd quietly chosen sides. Most chose mine. Melissa moved too. Different city, different industry. Started over completely. I didn't follow her beyond that initial update. Didn't care enough to track her life anymore. I ran into Richard once, Daniel's former boss, at a coffee shop downtown. He recognized me, approached carefully, asked how I was doing. Better, I said honestly. Much better. I want you to know the company took your report seriously. We should have had better oversight. The investigation revealed a pattern of inappropriate relationships and resource misuse that went beyond just Daniel and Melissa. We've implemented new policies. Good. No one else should have to go through what I did. I'm sorry we didn't see the signs at the party. I should have pushed more when I asked if you were all right. You couldn't have known. Daniel was very good at performing the perfect husband when it suited him. For what it's worth, he's not the golden boy I thought he was. You're better off. I know. Now, almost a year later, I'm sitting in my apartment writing this all out because someone asked me in another thread how I moved on after betrayal. Because they're going through something similar and wanted to know if it gets better. It does. But not the way you think. You don't move on by forgetting or forgiving. You move on by choosing yourself every single day until it becomes automatic. By setting boundaries and enforcing them. By refusing to accept crumbs when you deserve the whole meal. By understanding that someone else's betrayal is about their character, not your worth. The revenge part, the emails and the investigation and the public unraveling, that was satisfying in the moment. It felt like justice. It felt like control. And maybe it was both those things. But the real revenge, the thing that actually healed me, was building a life where Daniel's choices didn't define me anymore. Where I woke up and realized I'd gone an entire day without thinking about him. Where I looked in the mirror and recognized the woman staring back because she wasn't performing or shrinking or apologizing for existing. That's the revenge they never see coming. The version of you that thrives without them. I still have the flash drive. Keep it in a safe deposit box with copies in cloud storage, just in case. Daniel signed the papers, accepted the divorce, moved away, but I don't trust people who lie for 4 months straight. I protect myself now. I prepare for worst-case scenarios. I don't assume good intentions. Some people would call that cynical. I call it learned wisdom. My father asks sometimes if I regret how I handled things. If I wish I'd confronted Daniel differently, given him a chance to explain before I burned everything down. I don't. Not even a little. Because here's what I learned: the moment Daniel waved me off at that party while I was crying about my father in the hospital, he made his choice. The moment he called me emotional in front of his boss instead of asking what was wrong, he showed me exactly who he was. Everything after that was just me finally believing him. The emails to HR, to Trevor, the photo, the evidence collection, all of it was just me refusing to be a silent participant in my own humiliation. Daniel wanted me quiet and compliant and grateful for whatever attention he spared me. He wanted me to wait patiently while he built a new life with someone else, then accept the divorce gracefully so he could move on without consequences. I gave him consequences instead. I gave him accountability. I gave him the same public exposure he'd subjected me to every time he let Melissa touch his arm while I stood invisible across the room. People say revenge doesn't fix anything. Maybe they're right. The satisfaction faded eventually, replaced by the harder work of healing and rebuilding. But I don't regret it. Not the evidence gathering, not the carefully planned exposure, not the refusal to stay silent. I regret marrying someone who could look at me crying and decide his party was more important. I regret ignoring red flags because I wanted to believe in us more than I trusted my own instincts. I regret the years I spent making myself smaller so he could feel bigger. I don't regret making sure he faced consequences for his choices. Some threads on here talk about taking the high road, about being the bigger person, about moving on quietly without causing drama. Maybe that works for some people. Maybe that's their path to peace. My path required burning the bridge so completely that neither of us could ever cross back. Required making sure Daniel understood that actions have consequences and betrayal has a price. Required proving to myself that I could fight back, that I didn't have to accept mistreatment silently. Was it messy? Absolutely. Was it vindictive? Probably. Do I sleep better knowing Daniel lost everything he valued most because of his own choices? Yes. I really do. Because every time doubt creeps in, every time I wonder if I was too harsh or too calculating or too cold, I remember standing in that restaurant hallway with tears streaming down my face, trying 3 separate times to tell my husband my father was in the hospital, and having him wave me off like I was an annoying interruption. I remember him calling me emotional. Complicated. Just the wife. I remember every email where he discussed leaving me like I was a problem to be managed rather than a person he'd promised to love. And I remember standing in his office at 4 a.m, exhausted and betrayed and broken, making the choice to stop being the person things happened to and start being the person who made things happen. That's the woman I am now. The one who doesn't wait for permission or validation. The one who protects herself first. The one who understands that sometimes the high road is just another way of saying stay silent and accept less. I took the low road. The messy, complicated, vindictive road. And it led me here, to a life that's genuinely mine, to peace I earned by refusing to be disposable. So if you're reading this and going through something similar, if you're standing in a metaphorical hallway crying while someone who promised to love you waves you off, here's what I want you to know. You don't have to be nice about it. You don't have to protect their feelings or their reputation. You don't have to make their betrayal easier for them to live with. You can gather evidence. You can expose lies. You can refuse to be complicit in your own erasure. You can choose yourself, loudly and publicly and without apology. And when the dust settles and people ask if you regret how you handled it, you can look them in the eye and say no. Not even a little bit. Because the only thing worse than burned bridges is staying trapped on the wrong side of one. I'm free now. Truly, completely free. And I earned that freedom by refusing to stay quiet. That's my story. That's my truth. That's my revenge and my healing all tangled together into something that doesn't fit neat categories or moral lessons. It's just what happened when I finally chose myself over someone who'd stopped choosing me months before I noticed. And I'd do it again tomorrow. The aftermath stretched longer than I expected. Not the legal stuff, that was clean and finite. The emotional aftermath, the way it crept into unexpected moments and forced me to confront parts of myself I'd buried under years of being someone's wife. Sarah's guest room became my sanctuary for those first months. She worked from home 3 days a week, and I'd hear her on conference calls through the thin walls, confident and articulate, and I'd wonder when I'd lost that version of myself. The woman who'd had opinions and goals and a life that existed independent of Daniel's orbit. I started keeping a journal. Not the pretty, inspirational kind with prompts about gratitude. Just a plain notebook where I wrote everything I felt without filtering it for palatability. The entries from those early weeks are angry, jagged things. Lots of questions with no answers. Lots of rage at Daniel, at Melissa, at myself for not seeing it sooner. One entry from week 3 just says I made his breakfast every morning for 6 years over and over again, filling an entire page. I don't know what I was working through when I wrote it. The mundane intimacy of it, maybe. The way betrayal infects even the smallest rituals. My mother called every day. Sometimes twice. She'd ask how I was eating, if I was sleeping, if I needed anything. I appreciated it and resented it in equal measure. Appreciated because she cared. Resented it because I was 32 years old and felt like I'd regressed to being a child who couldn't take care of herself. During one call, maybe a month in, she said something that stuck with me. "You know what I keep thinking about? That night at the hospital, how you stayed with me until 3 in the morning even though you'd just left your husband's party. You were going through something awful and you still showed up for your father and me. That's character. That's who you are." I cried after we hung up. Not sad crying, something else. Relief, maybe. That someone saw me as more than just the woman who'd been betrayed. That I had evidence of my own worth beyond what Daniel had decided I was. The therapy helped more than I expected. My therapist, Dr. Chen, didn't do the thing where she tried to make me see Daniel's perspective or understand his pain. She focused on me. On rebuilding my sense of self, on processing the trauma of invisible mistreatment, on understanding that emotional abuse doesn't leave bruises but it leaves scars. "You were being managed," she said during one session. The way he'd wave you off, dismiss your concerns, make you feel like your needs were inconvenient. That's a pattern of control. It's subtle, but it's real. I'd never thought of it as abuse. It felt too dramatic, too victim-y. But she was right. I'd spent years adjusting my behavior to avoid his irritation, making myself smaller to fit into the spaces he allowed me, apologizing for having feelings that interfered with his comfort. The promotion party wasn't the beginning. It was just the moment I couldn't ignore it anymore. Work became complicated. I'd been freelancing part-time, editing and consulting for small marketing firms, projects I could do from home while supporting Daniel's career. Easy to pause, easy to restart. After the divorce, I needed something more substantial. Something that was mine. I interviewed at 3 agencies before finding one that felt right. Mid-sized, scrappy, building a reputation. They offered me a project manager position with room to grow. The salary was decent, the culture seemed healthy, and nobody there knew Daniel or had opinions about my divorce. Starting over professionally at 32 felt terrifying and liberating at once. I was rusty. Second-guessed myself constantly those first few weeks. But I was also hungry for it, for the chance to prove I was competent and capable, and not just the complicated emotional wife of someone important. My boss, Jennifer, was straightforward in a way I appreciated. During my 3rd week, I apologized for asking too many questions during a meeting. She looked at me confused. "You're new. You're supposed to ask questions. That's not a character flaw." Such a simple thing. But I realized I'd been conditioned to treat curiosity like an imposition, to apologize for needing information or clarity. Daniel had done that. Made me feel like asking him to explain things or repeat himself was burden rather than normal communication. I stopped apologizing for taking up space after that conversation. The dating was messy. I tried too soon, probably. Went on a handful of first dates with men from apps who were nice enough but forgettable. I wasn't ready. Wasn't healed. I'd sit across from perfectly decent humans and find myself comparing everything they did to Daniel, measuring their words against his lies, looking for red flags in innocent comments. One guy, Marcus, made it to a 3rd date. We went to dinner, talked about work and families and travel plans. He asked about my last relationship. "It ended badly," I said. "My ex had an affair with a coworker." "That's rough. Did you see it coming?" "No. Or maybe I did and convinced myself I was being paranoid. Hard to tell in retrospect. You seem like you're handling it well. I laughed. Couldn't help it. I burned his entire life down. Got him fired, exposed everything publicly, made sure he lost everything he valued. Does that seem like handling it well? Marcus looked uncomfortable. I mean, if he deserved it. He did. But you're wondering if I'm vindictive and unstable, right? If I do the same to you? I didn't say that. You didn't have to. There was no fourth date. I wasn't offended. I probably wouldn't date me either. Sarah said I needed to stop telling people the whole truth right away. You're not lying by omission. You're just waiting until they've earned the full story. She was right, but I didn't know how to do that. Daniel had made me so aware of my own messiness, my own complications. Not sharing everything immediately felt like I was tricking someone into liking me before they knew the real version. Therapy helped with that too. Dr. Chen pointed out that I was doing to myself what Daniel had done to me, defining myself by my worst moments instead of my whole self. You're not the revenge, she said. You're not the divorce. You're not the betrayal. Those are things that happened to you and choices you made in response. But they're not the sum total of who you are. 6 months post-divorce, my brother flew in from Portland to visit. We'd always been close, but he'd been traveling for work during the worst of everything. He called, texted, offered support from a distance. Now he was here, sitting in my new apartment, looking at me like he was trying to solve a puzzle. You seem different, he said. Good different or bad different? Just different. Harder, maybe. But also more real. Is that a compliment? Yeah. I always thought you were dimmed around Daniel. Like you were trying to fit into a shape that wasn't yours. You're brighter now. Sharper. I didn't know what to say to that. He was right, though. The softness I'd cultivated throughout my marriage, the accommodating nature Daniel had loved initially then found suffocating, it was gone. I traded it for edges. For boundaries that felt more like walls. For a hardness that protected me but also isolated me. Do you think I went too far? I asked. With the emails, the investigation, all of it? He considered it. Do you? Sometimes. Late at night, when I can't sleep, I think about Melissa crying in that grocery store. About Daniel having to start over in a new city. About the fact that I could have just divorced him quietly and moved on. But then I remember what he said to Richard. How he dismissed me crying about my father. How he planned to leave me anyway after Singapore. How he spent months lying to my face. And I don't regret it anymore. Then you didn't go too far. You went exactly as far as you needed to go. We spent the weekend together. Drove to the coast, walked along the beach, ate overpriced seafood at tourist traps. Normal sibling things. For hours at a time I forgot about Daniel completely. Just existed in the present, laughing at my brother's terrible jokes, arguing about music, planning a trip to visit him in Portland next month. That's when I realized the revenge had worked. Not because Daniel had lost things. But because I'd gained the ability to move through entire days without the weight of what he'd done crushing me. The holidays were hard. First Thanksgiving without Daniel's family, without the traditions we built, without pretending everything was fine over turkey and small talk. My parents invited me home, but I couldn't face it. Too many memories. Too many sympathetic looks. Too many questions about how I was really doing. I spent Thanksgiving with Sarah instead. She invited a handful of friends, people I'd met through her over the months of living in her spare room. We cooked together, drank wine that was too expensive for what we were celebrating, watched movies until we fell asleep on various couches. One of Sarah's friends, a woman named Keisha who worked in finance, had gone through a messy divorce 3 years prior. She pulled me aside during cleanup. Sarah told me your story. Not to gossip, just to explain why you might be feeling tender around the holidays. I'm fine, really. You don't have to be fine. First holiday after a divorce is brutal even when you're the one who wanted out. Did you regret yours? Every day for about 6 months. Then occasionally for another year. Now? Never. Not even when I'm alone on Christmas or watching couples hold hands or explaining to dates why my ex-husband doesn't pay child support. Does it get easier? It gets different. You stop measuring your life against what it was supposed to be and start appreciating what it actually is. That takes time, though. Longer than you think it should. Christmas I spent with my parents. Faced the sympathetic looks, answered the questions, survived the well-meaning but suffocating concern. My father looked good, healthy, Better than I'd seen him in years. He'd lost weight, started walking every morning, took his medication religiously. "You saved my life," he said one night when we were alone in the kitchen. "That night, having you there with your mother. If I'd been less stubborn about my health, if I'd taken things seriously before the collapse, you wouldn't have been at that hospital. You wouldn't have seen Daniel for who he really was. Dad, you didn't cause my divorce." I'm not saying I did. I'm saying maybe things work out the way they're supposed to. Maybe you needed that specific moment to break the spell he had you under. I wanted to argue, to tell him life doesn't work that way, that there's no cosmic purpose to betrayal and hospital scares and shattered marriages. But I didn't. Because part of me wondered if he was right. The new year came with resolutions I didn't make. I'd stopped setting goals that way, stopped trying to manifest a better version of myself through intention and discipline. Instead, I just tried to show up each day and make choices that felt authentic rather than safe. Several months into my new job, Jennifer called me into her office. I got a promotion. Project manager to senior project manager, modest raise, more responsibility. She told me I'd earned it, that my work had been exceptional, that I brought a level of precision and reliability the team needed. I cried in the bathroom afterward. Happy tears, proud tears, tears that came from being seen and valued for my actual contributions rather than my willingness to shrink and accommodate. Around that same time, I ran into one of Daniel's former co-workers at a coffee shop. Tom, decent guy, had always been kind to me at company events. He looked surprised to see me, then awkward. "Hey. How are you?" "Good. Really good, actually. I heard about everything with Daniel and Melissa. That was rough." "It was. But I'm better now." He hesitated, like he was debating whether to say more. "For what it's worth, a lot of people at the company were on your side. What he did, what they both did, it was messed up. The way he talked about you sometimes after you'd left parties, like you were an obligation. People noticed." My throat tightened. He talked about me? Not constantly or anything. But yeah, sometimes. Always made it seem like you were high maintenance or needy. A few of us thought it was weird, the way he'd build himself up by tearing you down. We just didn't realize there was more to it. Why didn't anyone say anything? What were we supposed to say? "Hey, your husband seems like he doesn't respect you?" That's not a conversation you have with someone at a cocktail party. We figured you knew what your marriage was like better than we did. He was right. They couldn't have known. I hadn't even known, not really. I'd felt it, sensed something wrong, but convinced myself I was being oversensitive. "Does he talk about me now?" I asked. Couldn't help it. "No idea. He's not with the company anymore, and I haven't kept in touch. Last I heard he was doing okay, new job, trying to rebuild. But I don't know details." "Good. I hope he is okay. Just far away from me." Tom smiled. "You seem lighter. Different. Everyone keeps saying that. Maybe because it's true." We chatted for a few more minutes, exchanged pleasantries, parted ways. I thought about that conversation for days after. About how Daniel had been erasing me long before Melissa, making me smaller in public so he could feel bigger. About how I'd internalized that diminishment, started to believe I really was too emotional, too needy, too complicated. The story I'm telling you now, the one you've been reading, I started writing it around that time. Not for revenge, not to process, just to have a record. To remind myself that I wasn't crazy, wasn't overreacting, wasn't the villain Daniel had tried to paint me as. But as I wrote, I realized it wasn't just for me. It was for everyone who's been waved off mid-crisis. Everyone who's been called emotional when they were being rational. Everyone who's been gaslit into thinking their valid concerns were character flaws. I imagined sharing this story someday. Wonder what responses it would get. Would people say I was a hero? Would they say I was vindictive? Would they understand completely or say I'd taken it too far? I think about that sometimes. About all the possible reactions, all the judgments people might make. One question keeps circling in my mind: you didn't just destroy his career, you destroyed Melissa's engagement and reputation too. She made terrible choices, but did she deserve to have her whole life imploded? I thought about that for a long time. About Melissa standing in the grocery store crying, telling me Trevor had left her, that Daniel had abandoned her, that she'd lost everything. About whether my revenge had been proportional or if I'd let anger guide me into cruelty. Here's what I decided: yes, she deserved consequences. No, I don't regret giving Trevor information he had a right to know. But do I feel good about the totality of her suffering? No. I feel neutral about it. She participated in my betrayal, and she faced consequences for that participation. I'm not going to apologize for refusing to protect her from the natural results of her choices. That's the complicated truth nobody wants to hear. Revenge doesn't feel purely good or purely bad. It feels necessary in the moment, satisfying briefly, then neutral long term. It's not the healing. It's just the boundary you draw that makes space for healing to happen. It's been a year and a half since that promotion party. The divorce is ancient history. The anger has mostly faded into indifference. Daniel exists somewhere, living some life, and I genuinely don't care what it looks like as long as it doesn't intersect with mine. I've been seeing someone new for 3 months. Ethan. He's a graphic designer, funny and patient and entirely unconnected to my past. He knows about Daniel, about the affair, about my dramatic response. I told him on our 5th date, after I decided he was worth the vulnerability of full honesty. His response was simple: sounds like he earned every bit of that. We're taking things slow. I'm taking things slow. Learning to trust again without constantly bracing for betrayal. Learning that not every man who works late is having an affair. Learning that I can have needs and express them without being called complicated. Sometimes I still dream about that promotion party. Standing in the hallway, phone in my hand, trying to get Daniel's attention while he laughed with Melissa. In the dreams, I handle it differently. Sometimes I make a scene. Sometimes I leave quietly without trying. Sometimes I confront him right there in front of everyone. I always wake up before the dream resolves. And I always feel grateful that real life turned out the way it did. Messy and painful and brutal, yes. But ultimately mine. The flash drive still exists in that safety deposit box. I check on it twice a year, make sure the cloud backups are current. Not because I think I'll need it. Daniel signed the papers, accepted the terms, moved on. But because I learned the hard way that trusting people to do the right thing when there's no accountability is naive. I protect myself now. Prepare for worst-case scenarios. Verify instead of trusting blindly. Some call it cynical. I call it wisdom earned through experience. A few months before I started writing this, Sarah asked if I'd consider moving out, getting my own place permanently. Not because she wanted me gone, but because she thought I was ready. She was right. I'd been ready for months but scared to admit it. Scared that living alone meant accepting this was really my life now, that the future I'd imagined with Daniel was dead and I had to build something new from nothing. I signed a lease. Moved in shortly after. 1-bedroom apartment with big windows and a kitchen I'll actually use. Space that's entirely mine, decorated how I want, filled with my choices and my energy and my peace. Daniel doesn't get to haunt those rooms. Melissa doesn't exist in those walls. It's just me, starting completely over, building a life I didn't plan but I'm learning to love anyway. That's the real ending to this story. Not the dramatic revenge or the explosive confrontation or the satisfying consequences. Just me, moving into a new apartment, going to work, seeing someone who treats me with basic respect and kindness, slowly becoming a version of myself I actually recognize and like. The revenge was necessary. The exposure was justice. The consequences were earned. I don't apologize for any of it. But the peace? The quiet satisfaction of a life that's genuinely mine? That's what I was really fighting for all along. And I got it.